Captain's Log, June 2nd, 2836. After 27 years of war between the Degen Coomers and the Sainthood Slayers, a new hope arises. As the battlefield lay weaponized, locked and loaded for destruction, negotiations for a peace treaty are in transition. The moderator has arrived at Station 42. Can this war be ended? Will the Coomers and Slayers find a middle ground?
Abort mission. I repeat, abort mission. Negotiation failure. Abort mission.
Heavy booties, 6+, low orbit, over grid 15-2.
No joy, Yashin-Mod.
Then go to your window and look up their biggest fracking asteroid.
Copy, Yashin-Mod. Still blind. Got some kind of system-wide crash in the defense grid.
Go on, track yourself right goddamn now, because we got Boku inbound, and they're not carrying flour.
Wait one, Yashin-Mod.
We don't have one.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am Sara the Raging Tomato here, bringing to you live another Moderator Monday on a Sunday night, as always. This evening, I have Melanie Cosmic Fox, also known as Furby to the locals. Welcome back, Furby. And then I also have Ticky Tac, both here to debate on, do we need sex education in school? I find this to be a very interesting topic. It sets very down deep low in my heart. So I'm very interested in hearing the thoughts on this topic. Mel, you have the affirmative position. Would you like to give your opening?
Yeah, totally. So thank you, Sara, for hosting this debate. And thank you, Ticky Tac, for being here to debate me. I'm just going to kind of like freeform this. I don't have anything written down. I'm here tonight to debate the benefits and, if not necessary, of giving comprehensive sexual education to children as early as possible. The reason for this is that children are constantly being bombarded with messaging about sex and how sexuality works. Some of it is misinformation, and the most important thing is that they have guidance that prepares them for a life that where they're going to be sexual beings. So I want us all to acknowledge something for a second. We are sexual beings, right? We have sex, we derive pleasure from sexual stimulation. That's totally fine. One of the things that I think are going to make people really uncomfortable during this is talking about the fact how people under 18 are also sexual beings. They will be exploring their bodies. They will be exploring sexuality with each other, and informing them before they engage with that on how to do those things safely is not just important for them, but important for the people around them. In fact, teaching kids about these things can reduce their chances of being facing child SA, and I'm just going to say it once just for those who don't know, child sexual assault, because they're not only able to recognize it, but they're able to they're more likely to know who to bring it up with and what to do about it. If the point here is, I think, sorry, here, let me just formulate this properly. If we are saying that sex education is good and that we need it, then one of the problems is that we can't rely on parents to give a standardized, comprehensive sex education. We can certainly rely on parents to give guidance. In fact, that's what parents do, but not all of them are going to have all of the answers, and that is okay. This is why it turns out that when a lot of kids can't end up trusting their parents, the next person in line that they'll go to seek advice and guidance is a teacher. And we want those teachers to have those answers for when they need them, for when those parents can't give them those answers. My case is not about reinforcing anything bad about sex or anything like that. In fact, multiple studies show that giving this sort of sex education not only doesn't make them more likely to have sex before they turn 18, but makes them but if they are, then they're more likely to do it safely. So I'm here to protect children. I am here to make sure that they have the best possible outcomes in life. And more importantly, that they aren't victims of people who essentially want to clutch pearls because of their fears and disgust around this sort of subject matter.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Ticky Tac to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Sarah, for hosting this debate today. So should sex education be in schools? I say it should not, and it does not serve any substantial benefit as to why it should be allowed at the expense of taxpayers to fund such services. There is a prominent claim that reduction of teen pregnancy and STIs is overall a net positive from comparative analysis of the contrary. However, it is common to conflate that sex education has a substantial influence of reducing teen pregnancy and STIs. There's not enough evidence to support the correlation. I found one of the core studies of research pointing to substantiate these claims produced by the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, where their curated studies of meta-analysis ranging from the 1990s to the mid-2000s, testing comprehensive sex education, the outcomes of pregnancy with the outcomes of pregnancy and STIs. There are many things to dispel the results of these studies, such as no controls, limited time frames of the studies, typically only 1 year, only target demographics of 12 to 14-year-olds. There were multiple community initiatives going on during the time of the studies, such as reduced restrictions of contraceptives, parental education, and community outreach. Another part of this debate, I will be challenging the current claims for sex education being beneficial in schools with the counterclaim to reinforce why we are witnessing lower teen pregnancy and STI rates. Since in the 1960s, when pill-based contraceptives were introduced and there were federal initiatives to make contraceptives in general more accessible, we saw a rapid decline in pregnancy and STI rates and has been the common trend since. But we are now presented with some new statistics over the past 10 years that STIs have been increasing among the adolescent demographics of 16 to 24 years. This seems there are other factors involved than sex education that is influencing this, which I'll have plenty to discuss about on this part of the topic. Lastly, there are some grounds to be had under one's right to control what their child is taught that should sway towards letting the parents decide what their kid is taught, not what the government decides. I'll be happy to address all this and more, and I'll yield my time.
Thank you so much to both of you. And just for the record, I would like to push out a Twitter/X drive this week. I want to set a goal to try to get 1,000 followers over there. Just to kind of push that platform a little bit more. So mods, if you could kindly every so often bother the chat and drop my X link. It is found in my About Me section, and I believe Nightbot drops it every so often as well. If we could just follow that drive and drive it all the way to heaven, I would be super excited. As always, we will do about 2 hours worth of debate. We will read and respond to super chats, and then we will open the panel for open panel dumpster fire. So hang out for that. Outside of that, the floor is yours, guys.
So I kind of want to first start out to figure out like what the topics that we want to hop into. I mentioned teen pregnancy and teen STIs. You brought up child SA. So I think those are three of the other topics. What are some other things that you want to cover?
I mean, I think we can get a lot of those for now. We'll just see where that gets us. With teen pregnancy, do you think that a correlation between states that have the highest rates of teen pregnancy and the ones with the worst sex or least comprehensive sex education might be some sort of an indicator that how much sex education you give students, you know, will determine how likely they are to engage in activities which are more riskier to cause pregnancy?
No, and it's because of the trend that I found is usually the accessibility to contraceptives. And whenever you see like these introductions of sex education, there's also strong like initiatives on providing contraceptives to everybody to use. And so you can't really delineate if it's actually the sex education that's doing it or the contraceptives. The only thing I can point to is back in the 1960s when we introduced contraceptives, it reduced pregnancy overall.
So Louisiana is third in the United States for teen pregnancy rate. However, they don't have a problem with access to contraceptives. In fact, they have several bills that make them very accessible, but they still have a problem with teaching sex ed properly. So I want to know how you justify this, where there's a clear anomaly that contradicts your explanation, and how you plan to explain this. Because personally, as like I can see very clearly here, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, regardless of how much contraception they've offered and their history with contraception, they all have, and in fact, they all have increasingly better, because I was going from the top down, increasingly better sex education as teen pregnancy rates decrease, almost as if the more comprehensive the sexual education is, the more the less teen pregnancy. So
well, that's the part that you would have to correlate, have the direct correlate between the sex education itself is that influence, because I could point to other things.
I think you're
like
using
I could
correlate
point
properly.
well that is the correlate you're trying to build here, is the sex more comprehensive sex education means lower rates of teen pregnancy, right?
I think what we're actually trying to talk about is causation, and the problem is that you can't describe causation about these things until you can find something that's a predictor for these outcomes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you still haven't demonstrated that predictor.
No, I have. So for one thing, a much stronger predictor for teen pregnancy rates in the state will be how comprehensive the sex education is, on top of contraception availability. Like if there's no contraception availability, I'm sure that will also affect things. But as I point out, Louisiana actually has a lot of contraception accessibilities, yet despite that, they still have the third highest teen pregnancy rate in the country. How do you explain that?
Because really, when it comes to the fact of the matter, teen pregnancy has been on an overall decline ever since the 60s. And to say that it may be just a little bit higher than the next state, I don't think is something you could correlate to sex education, because right now we're actually below the birth rate, the required fertility rates.
I don't feel like that actually eliminates it as a predictor. And as I stated, it's a better predictor for these rates. I need to point out, this is a better predictor for these rates than contraception availability.
But you haven't really demonstrated that.
Yeah. So again, Louisiana is here. I sent you the links, but I can bring it up on the screen or something. Louisiana is the third highest rate. According to Psychus, they have an overall state policy grade of D, and part of that is because they offer lots of contraceptions, but their sex ed content is given an F. This particularly shows that sex ed content is a much bigger driver for teen pregnancy than contraception accessibility.
But the thing is, I have studies to point to the contrary.
Okay, what do they say?
It's plain and simple of the availability of contraceptives equals less pregnancies and less STIs. That's just it.
What do they say about like situations like Louisiana, where if you use that, you would actually predict that it has a very low teen pregnancy rate until you factor in something like sex ed?
I think it was more specific on the urban communities have a much higher rate of teen pregnancy than anywhere else, and it's more of a cultural thing. So that is also another thing that you have to account in the meta-analysis, because a lot of these studies are heavily targeted within urban communities.
So Psychus, by the way, tends to be as like broad and overarching as possible, not making distinctions like urban versus rural, because they are the leading council on sex education and stuff like that. So a lot of their studies have to do with taking census data, for example, which isn't biased between urban and rural.
The problem is that I have no way of verifying that, because I never had any time.
Right,
to
you have to
read the
either
studies.
take my argument at face value or come up with a real reason to refute it. What I'm telling
Yeah,
you right,
and I
what I'm
gave you
telling you right now,
contraceptives.
Ticky Tac. Let me lay my plane. What I'm telling you right now is that you are not going to be able to predict teen pregnancy rates with contraception accessibility alone. You at least have to factor in sex education quality as well, because sex education is one of the strongest determinants of this.
But the thing is that I can make the same face value claim that you can't take sex education at face value, and you have to rely on contraceptives. It's like it. So we're now just in a stalemate.
Not really, because again, I've pointed to an example like Louisiana, where if you were correct that we could use this thing as a predictor, then Louisiana should have a very low teen pregnancy rate, but it doesn't, thus showing that your metric is not a very good predictor of these things, and we cannot go forward using that as a predictor.
So I'm curious, what is the time frame with these statistics that you're looking at?
The time frame. So right now we haven't gotten into statistics so much. Just the teen pregnancy rate.
Well,
That's
yeah,
from the CDC.
that is a statistic.
I'm giving you the answers right now. That is from the CDC in the year 2022. The grades that are given to the states by psychists, I believe, are as current as possible. So most likely 2023 or 2024.
But what are the trends? So you're looking at a static single year, where I'm looking at trends overall throughout multiple years. So are we seeing just an overall decline in teen pregnancy over the past, like, let's say 10 years?
That depends heavily on what state we're talking about. In fact,
well, I'm asking overall on, like, just let's say you lose Louisiana.
Right. So in Louisiana, as their sex ed curriculum seems to get better with time, you also see that trend go up. That is just correlation. I'll give you that much. We can't infer causation from that.
But no, I don't think you have anything to substantiate that claim.
Yeah, no, something being a predictor for the outcomes of something else is actually a very substantial claim.
No, but you're claiming that somehow Louisiana's sex education is getting better, when it's like, and then you're also throwing away the idea that maybe access to contraceptive is better. And we're also haven't even gotten into the nuance of, like, what exactly is contraceptive, because from one state to the next, they allow abortion, and some of them don't. So if people who don't allow abortion are going to have higher teen pregnancy rates versus the ones that do have abortion.
So the psychist page actually does, it's a very long read, but it does tell you about like the closer look of the state laws and how things have been going over time. They particularly point out that, sorry, I lost my spot in this. So there's been a revised statute, Louisiana revised statute, section 1728. I'll just bring that up to see what year that is. Oh, they do not make that easy to find. Okay, I don't know what year this bill was made. It's oh wait, no, those are other acts that they're giving dates for. This would be one of the most recent things to have changed this, though. Mandates that sex education cannot be offered in grades K to 6 except in Orleans Parish, right? So these are nuanced things when you're asking about, like, the trends of these things.
It is a nuanced subject, though.
And one of the things that we can use to kind of get rid of some of the noise is say, okay, we've got data set A, we've got data set B. What is data set A or data set B a predictor for when I use them to make inferences, right? So if I've got a, like, the teen pregnancy list, and I've got all these different states in their sex ed curriculum, and then I say, okay, so if I order these by who has the best sex curriculum and who doesn't, do I see a match, like a not proportionality? I think you know what I mean, right? Do we see the expected results on the same rows of the table across from that? And this is why I brought up Louisiana in particular, because I can't remember where I read this about this, and I'll give you that much. My notes are not that specific, but I did definitely read somewhere that Louisiana is one of the exceptions to the rule where they offer far more birth control.
So now, okay, then I would ask, what are some states that actually, like, deviate from the norm?
Well, Louisiana was one of the ones I gave an example of.
Well, deviate from the norm of sex education equals lower teen pregnancy rates.
Oh, there actually isn't any. Here, let me see if I can find anything in the table that I might have missed last time. But it's almost 1-to-1. like as you go down the list in quality of sex ed education, then teen pregnancies predictably goes up.
Okay, which study is this?
This is the cdc.gov teen birth heat map, but they also give the rates and a chart underneath, and I'm comparing that with the SICUS state profile section. I mean, trends are something to discuss. I feel like that's a bit outside of the scope of like such a debate, just because even like if the trends were to show something that made me wrong, then I'd be looking into that. But just the fact that trends exist doesn't tell me anything. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense, because trends do provide a lot of valuable information.
Right, but would that valuable information necessarily contradict anything I've said here?
Quite possibly, because we don't know all the variables that exist of influencing why like teen pregnancy rates would go up or down. It's like it's not solely reliant on sex education. It's accessibility, contraceptives, and heck, even when we look at increased economical status, that also decreases teen pregnancy. This was also in the American Journal of Preventative Care that I mentioned. So this is why I'm trying to figure out like where exactly, like what are the criteria to fill this data out? What are all the considerable factors? Because when I look at these charts, I don't really see a direct correlate between what you're describing. I guess I just don't know where to look, because I've been given these sources just so quickly. So
right, you didn't set out like any sort of like arrangement where we would do a pre-debate and go through these sources and figure out what we're going to use. And it's also kind of useless just to send somebody a bunch of sources. I don't know how many debates you've done where you've tried that, but at the end of the day,
well, that's why
there's not a lot of exchange that goes on because of that.
Well,
so
that's why I condensed mine. That's why I
as I
condensed
said,
my time. Or
it's sometimes people do, sometimes people don't. But if you do, typically we want to send that further in advance so that they have time. If you plan on citing something and you want them to have a constructive feedback back and forth on the subject matter being brought forth. I think we've accepted the fact that it was kind of a last minute exchange, and I don't think we need to make it part of the actual debate. I think we've all noted that, and we can move on.
I literally said, by the way, not to send me his sources before we start the debate, because I specifically do not want to know his tactics, which brings me back to my overall strategy. Ticky Tac, you have made a lot of arguments that you seem to sound confused about how these things tend to operate. Do you have an argument that the comprehensive sex ed cannot do any of the things that I've claimed, such as protecting kids from CSA, such as making them less likely to incur teen pregnancies, such as making them more likely to use contraceptives, or
you're gish galloping. You're gish galloping now. It's like we already discussed like the 3 topic sets that are here, and we're going by like one by one. So do you want to continue the one by one?
No. I would like you to make an actual assertion, because you saying that you don't understand how these things work.
I did make the assertion that the
availability.
I did make the assertion that the availability of contraceptives overall reduces pregnancy and STIs, and that is just a known fact.
And the thing is, if that were true.
But the thing is that if you were to take a look at the birth rates in general and STI rates from the 1960s over the 1980s, there was a huge drop. And since from the 1980s till now, we've kind of just seen a little bit of a flat line, a little bump up, a little bump down. There's no actual like trends to say that we're actually changing from the rates, other than just this nuance to say like, oh, Louisiana has a slightly higher birth rate than the other states. Well, it's kind of like
no, that's not what I said. Can you not straw person me, please? I specifically said that if what you said is true.
I'll steel man it. If the case were that higher access to contraceptives was directly correlate to teen pregnancies, then we would see a trend of Louisiana being lower. But we don't. We instead see that sex education it has a lower quality in Louisiana versus the rest of the states, and that's the reason why teen pregnancy is higher. That's your steel man, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I understand it. I'm just trying to use shortened words in order to get along with the conversation. The thing is that when you take over these like comparatives, it's like you also have to understand we're already at a very low rate. So what exactly is like your expectation of where is the ideal place where teen pregnancy should be? What is the ideal rate?
So there is no ideal rate. It is ideal that we continue to lower it. And one of the things that
we're talking about trends now, if we were continuing to lower it.
Right. And so we need to find things that can predictably lower it. So
and
you've
I've
already
predictably described a trend being that the access to contraceptives lowers the rates. And and that is known from the 1960s all the way on.
Yeah, and like I said, if that had predictive value, then that would tell us where Louisiana should be relative to other states with less contraceptive availability.
But the trend is the predictive value, and the trends are. Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Because yes, again, it is. Oh, are you saying that contraceptives somehow increases pregnancy?
No, I don't need to make that claim. In fact, as I pointed out,
decreases pregnancy, right?
Remember, you're not making a you're not making a relativist claims. You're making an absolute claim. I'm the one making relativist claims here, so I don't need it to necessarily increase it to prove my any points. Well, you need to prove that comprehensive sex education either cannot reduce these things, has no capability of doing that, or that it somehow increases it.
The thing is that I'm not taking that full absolutist stance, because the actual subject and topic of the debate is if sex education should be in schools. So all I have to do is establish that sex education does not provide this value where I think it's justified in order to be taught within the public school system. So this is the reason why I'm trying to dispel these claims to say that somehow sex education is the golden rule towards all of these quote unquote better outcomes, which I am happy to get into discrediting them.
Except when I've already pointed out that the thing that you've used to discredit it isn't even a predictor for outcomes. Therefore, it can't be more causal than sex education alone.
No, but it is a predictor for outcomes because we see the trends.
So again, if there are other things that can clearly have a much greater impact on these things, and you have to rely to a delta T type function, which, by the way, delta T means that you can just focus at any given point and see a rate of change that doesn't actually tell you if it's abnormally high or low to begin with. I'm not here making any prescriptions of where it should be. All I'm saying is that I agree it should be getting lower. What we saw in the 90s, because you pointed this out earlier, and with that huge drop in almost every state, is that sexual education became more comprehensive. It stopped trying to teach kids about STI prevention and teen pregnancy alone, or a lot of it went from abstinence only to being abstinence plus.
There wasn't a huge drop in the 90s. There was a huge drop between the 60s to 90s. From the 90s till now, it's been pretty stagnant.
That makes my point even better, because between the 60s and the 90s is when sexual education started being introduced into schools.
It doesn't, because there's a very specific nuance onto this. In the 1960s, they were teaching abstinence-only sex education. They were not pushing for contraceptives in schools. But what they were doing is that there were federal initiatives in order to push contraceptives as a community effort. So that is what resulted in the reduced pregnancy rates, teen pregnancy rates.
So are you just focused on the 60s, or are you going between the 60s and the 90s here? Because it wasn't in the
60s
70s
and 80s. 60s and 80s. 60s and 80s, 60s and 80s.
Wow,
you're talking over me. I'm trying to explain the timeline here. From the 60s to 80s.
You've already laid out that the 60s is when we got contraception, and that's when it started going down. I'm now going to make the counterpoint if you can fucking handle it.
No, because I
can't. Okay, so you can't handle it. Why are we debating it? Why are we debating if you can't handle a counterpoint?
Hold on. Let him at least let him finish and land.
No, you're gishgalopping, dude.
No, I'm not.
I stopped when you said I was gishgalopping. Maybe it's time for you to stop
right now. I'm trying to explain the history right now.
Mel, let it be. Mel, let it be. Let him finish his thought, and then you can definitely counter back. You do have the affirmative position, so it is up for Ticky Tac to poke holes.
From 1960s to 1980s, it was abstinent-only sex education. Then from the 1980s is when they actually started teaching more contraceptives because of the AIDS, HIV epidemic that was happening. But the trend line, it was still the same from the 1960s to the 1990s throughout both subsets of sex education. And the only thing that hasn't changed is the availability of contraceptives.
So there's plenty of literature out there that shows that abstinence only or even abstinence plus education, which we can get into what that means if you need, has limited ability to reduce teen pregnancies and reduce the chance of STIs.
Completely agree.
The reason that this drop, that you can only quantify this drop between the 60s and the 80s, because it was actually in the 70s where schools started doing more than just abstinence only education.
Oh, so then there was no sex education before the 70s and there was availability of contraceptives. So that proves my point.
Right. And one of the reasons why they didn't just start seeing a trend and being like, oh, well, I guess we have a trend now, we don't have to do anything more, is because it turned out that a lot of kids were reporting that they're being given condoms and they don't know what the hell to do with them.
The issue is
so let me just land my plane. If you go out in the wild and you hand a kid a condom and say, good luck with life, that's not really going to help them much. It's not until you teach them how to use it that they can actually protect themselves with it.
Yeah, and that's what community outreach did.
But here's the thing though, is that if you do community outreach, you can't get to any of the kids who aren't out and about in the community. The only thing that can reach the most possible kids is school.
Well, the ones who are not out and about in the community, I don't think they're doing much sex either.
That's not true.
What do you
so
mean by
going
that?
back, so going to CSA, child SA prevention, in particular, they are most likely to be attacked by the people that they know, people in their own homes.
Oh, so okay, so you want to get into the SA topic? I'm fine with that. So you know that there's still an issue where children do not report their SA until they're adults, right?
Sure, but if you want to talk about trends,
it's about 60%. It's about
sure. If you want to talk about trends, that's lower than ever.
And there's no correlation to the actual sex education makes the children more open to talking about these things.
That's the reason wrong.
No, I'll explain. Is because the reason why we're able to catch sex offenders and also children who have been victims is because the education towards parents, therapists, criminal psychologists, they're able to identify the trends of a child who's been victimized. So they're able to approach them and ask more questions about it. It's not the child approaching anybody else to say that something's happened to them.
So the reason why, by the way, sex education reduces the chance, not just the chances that they will put themselves in that situation where they're SA'd, but that they might also report it, is because, especially for younger kids, when you give them a language to describe what is happening and what has happened, and a language to understand why it's wrong, and you tell them who to report it to and what can be done about it, they are 100 times more likely to seek help for that thing than when they feel confused, ashamed, or just generally are just a voiceless victim as a result of this sort of thing. Yeah, so several of the studies I sent you does have that data.
No, it doesn't. It just makes the claim. It just makes the claim.
So
you can't really get into the data.
You've already complained that I sent you the data last minute. You also can't affirm that it doesn't have that data. So you can't say no, it doesn't.
Those were the few articles that I was able to look up and read at a glance, because it was one of the subjects that I was thinking into. The issue is that you're trying to use a source that says like, oh, children report more whenever they understand more, when the children in general just don't report this kind of stuff that goes on. It's like it's in the 60 percentile and it hasn't really changed. So it's like, where are they getting this data of the unreported versus the reported?
So it really has changed. Reporting has gone up a lot, especially since the 60s. And more importantly, it seems like
Not directly by the child,
predators.
though.
It seems like predators, PDFs, feel less secure with approaching children in general, unless they do it like online where they can possibly feel safe. Part of this is that children now know who to report to. They know that a teacher and a principal are trained to handle that sort of thing. Not
Yes,
just trained to
I'm
handle
agreeing with that. I'm agreeing with that part.
And by knowing that those people are there to help, you are automatically more likely to report that than when you feel isolated from avenues of seeking help.
The thing is that it's not the child that is seeking for help. It's usually a parent or a teacher or a therapist that's actually getting involved. They identify the signs of trauma or victimization, and they help to open them up. It's not. It's like children are not just going and announcing themselves like, "Oh, I've been touched inappropriately." It still is on the parents and the adults to identify that. So it's not
here's a paper called
thing.
Here's a paper called 3 Decades of Research, the Case for Comprehensive Sex Education. It's written by a wonderful sex researcher whose I can only remember her last name. It goes by Goldfarb. This section is called, and I'll read it as long as you need until you want to jump in, because it's much longer than even I would like it to be. The section is called Child Sex Abuse Prevention. And it says, this review found strong evidence for the effectiveness of child sex abuse prevention efforts in elementary school. Such programs typically use behavioral practices and role play and encourage parental involvement. They teach about body ownership and the children's right to control their bodies, and about communication and self-protection. A strong meta-analysis of 27 preschool through grade 5 programs and a systematic review of 24 K through 5 programs demonstrate significant effects of a wide range of outcomes, including behaviors in stimulated at-risk situations. Another large systematic review concluded that, in general, parental involvement, opportunities for practice, repeated exposure, and sensitivity to developmental levels were key characteristics of effective child sex abuse programs. Improving knowledge, attitudes, skills, and social emotional outcomes related to personal safety and touch. And this is kind of like another subsection, so I don't want to put you through.
Yeah, but that doesn't substantiate the scenario of if a child has this education and if they were victimized, that then they would follow through with reporting. All it says is that they're now more well educated.
What do you think substantiation means?
What I'm trying to get at is that when a child is SA'd, they go into a completely different psychological mindset where they do not want to talk about it, and that's part of the trauma that comes along with it. So it's like you're trying to say that a child is going to end up being responsible and actually report something that happens to them when they're not psychologically fit to even handle it. So you cannot even predict how they're going to handle it.
So given that there is strong evidence for the effectiveness of child sex abuse prevention programs, what do you think that means? Do you think that effectiveness here just means that they were able to have a class about it? Or do you think just let me land my plane here. Or do you think it means that the rates of child sex abuse went down while rates of reporting went up?
What I'm saying is that when you read all those passages and it said there is an effectiveness in it, the only descriptors that came along with it of why it's effective is just essentially being able to talk to the children and having them identify what is good and what is bad.
That's
they're
not just it.
Yeah, that is what it was just described. It's
so
like
teaching a child that they have the right to control their own body. That is a huge part of it.
Well, yeah, that's essentially what I'm getting at. It's not going through a scenario of, oh, okay, so we had this child who had that education and they've been victimized. Do they follow through with actually communicating these issues? And the trends do not say it. They do.
No, but
because this is a psychologically traumatizing event to them. It's like you could literally just throw education out the window because they're psychologically fucked at that point.
I think you're starting to use trends as a buzzword here, because I know what the trends are, and the trends is that, again, child sexual abuse has gone down while reporting of it has gone up.
And
Mm.
so in private chat, I
So
posted a link that goes
I'm
into multiple
still not
explanations
done.
as to why the sexual abuse cases have been declining, and none of it is based off of child's education.
Thank you for moderating, Sarah. So when they say that they found strong evidence for the effectiveness of it, when they say effectiveness, they mean that children are using these skills. Effectiveness in curriculum means that you have learning goals, and those learning goals are achieved. Here, the learning goals are for children to learn that they have a right to their body, that they can report these things, et cetera, et cetera. And the effectiveness means that we're seeing them use that.
But it's only proving the effectiveness that they're able to retain the information.
Not necessarily. One of those studies looks at that, but the other ones, because this is a literature review, talks about why the trends are going down and how the reports of these things went up after we started introducing this into sex education.
Yeah, you would have to substantiate that more. It's
okay. Sure. I wasn't going to get
because
into the sub literature, but we can.
the thing is just because I have counter evidence to say that that is not the reason why that there's a decline in SA and a more follow through of reporting. It's like it goes back to what I was trying to describe, is that adults are more aware of being able to identify the issues with children who may have been victimized, and are able to get them to admit to some of this stuff.
Well, who's going to be more likely to do it though? Like a teacher or a parent?
The thing is that teachers, they're probably not even well qualified in being able to identify this either.
No, they're literally trained to do this.
I don't know. They're really not.
No, they actually are. In fact, that's part of public safety, is to make sure that teachers can recognize signs that a child is being abused. There might be some states where that's not required, but I know that it's pretty much across the board that teachers learn that.
Okay.
And principals.
Okay. But this also kind of tails back to why does sex education need to be in schools? And we are speaking in the context of for children. Your claim is that the children, for some if you teach them all these characteristics of SA, that they are less likely to be victimized or more open to reporting to other people.
Can I just ask you to clarify,
I'm giving you the
though,
counter on that.
When you say we teach them characteristics of SA, what do you think that means? I'm not saying that we tell them we give them examples of SA.
I actually don't know the specific context of it, but it's just a generalization of, it's like people teaching them. I really don't know. I really don't know.
Let me try to.
I just don't really see the relevance to it to a certain extent, because I'm looking at the statistic of, if you teach them these whatever arbitrary list of things, does it result in them being able to tell parents or individuals more often that
yes, because now they have a language to describe it.
No, that's a claim, but it's not substantiated.
Okay, I don't know what you think substantiation means. This is what people who study child psychology and sex education have concluded based on what they see from the research. So,
but that's just an
they're not concluding this from unsubstantiated claims. They're concluding this from research and literature reviews, like the one I'm trying to point you to.
But the thing is that every time I look into this research, they don't actually have any statistics to back it up. They're just making a correlation to say that, oh, it logically follows, so it must be true.
So you understand that, aside from maybe offhandedly citing some statistics, most literature reviews are not big into analyzing statistics. That's more of what a meta-analysis is for. And I can send you one. In fact, I have one for you right now, and it's even I've got I've gotten past the paywall for you, so I'll send you that. And it's Child Sexual Abuse Programs, a meta-analysis. Now, the problem with meta-analysis is you need to know a lot about I don't even know how you'd put it, just a university level math and statistics to be able to understand what the heck they're doing in half of these things. So all the power to you to try to figure that out. But I guarantee you that before these literature reviews and meta-analysis come out to give these things praised, that these substantiated research papers with evidence that with the evidence that you're looking for are ample in number. Like, I don't know why you think when these papers say that there is a lot of evidence expressing how successful these things are, then you tune out and be like, well, I guess there's not a lot of substantiation there. Like those two things cannot coexist. You cannot have a lot of evidence about how effective something is and it also be unsubstantiated.
Well, now you're changing the context on evidence when you were actually just making claims of these things are effective, and the only descriptors that you gave as to why they're effective is because children are able to communicate these things that they learned. And it's like, I'm trying to pose the argument of when a child gets victimized, they're in a different psychological state where they wouldn't be able to repeat that information out, and it's usually a requirement of adult intervention in order to treat them correctly.
So I want to point out to you how, like, you're asking for substantiation. I have a feeling that if you actually read the things that substantiate this, your brain might melt a little bit. Here's a section from this that talks about exactly what you're asking for. I'm just not sure you would use the same words for it. This indicates that on average, after controlling for sample size, children who participated in prevention programs performed 1.07 standard deviation higher than the control group children on outcome measures used in the studies. The calculated effect size dropped to 0.81 when one outlying study was removed from the data set. Both numbers are considered to be large effects. Importantly, these effect sizes can only be interpreted as improvements in the prevention-related knowledge skills of children who participate in the programs.
But again, these are just kind of claims, and
see, you don't understand it. Then you don't understand what you just heard there.
No, I do, and here's the reason why I'm saying they're just claims is because for every meta-analysis, you have to actually go back to the original sources and see what data is actually there. And typically, whenever I do look into the actual sources, they're not that great. It's like they're. Do
you understand why we do meta-analysis, though? Do you understand why we do them?
Yes, I do.
Why do we do them?
It's to figure out a higher level of consensus of what the consistent data points are upon a particular hypothesis.
Well, that's what it's used for. Why we do them.
Yeah, exactly.
No, let me explain. Why we do them is because not every single study is meant to be something that points to the answer to the question that the meta-analysis is asking. But a lot of these studies have data that's very relevant to it, right? So if you open up a study and it's talking about the ethical considerations of teaching sex ed to kids in Iraq, and you're like, well, I'm American, why the fuck do I care? But then you're asking, overall, regardless of country, do these things effectively reduce CSA? Then that's something that filters out the noise of your personal bias as a reader looking for specific answers. One of the key things that meta-analyses provide, like me as somebody who also wants to navigate these issues and have the right side of things, is that when they said the calculated effect size dropped to 0.81 when one outlining study was removed from the data set, both numbers are considered to be large effects. They're saying that every single data, every single research thing that has ever contributed to this piece of the puzzle all points to large effects of these programs making children more likely to report. It literally said that. It's not just making a claim. It's not just making a claim. It's literally saying how many of these studies actually demonstrate an effect.
Yeah, the issue is that you're taking at face value that they're telling you the truth.
Yeah, you do that with literally everything you read. You do that with when you go back in the studies. You do that with primary sources. The only thing that you have against this is your critical thinking skills. And I'm telling you right now, dude, I read this to you. You did not have an argument against it. You're just getting more and more confused.
Well, it's the reason why I don't have an argument against it is because I haven't had time to actually read through the meta-analysis to see, like, what are the discrepancies, what are the limitations, what are the studies that they're referring to, and then going to those source studies and figure out what their data set, what is the timeline.
An argument that can.
No, I can't do that. No, I can't do that because you gave
Then
me
you
the
just don't
source
have an
right on the
argument
fly.
against this. Then you just
Yeah.
don't have an argument against teaching this in schools.
The argument I have against it is that you're taking it at face value and you're expecting me to take it at face value as truth, and I'm not going to do that.
Well, because you don't have any reason to reject it. And since you don't have a
I
reason
do have a reason to reject
and you
it.
have no argument against
I do
it
have
at
a
face
reason to
value,
reject it right now, which
No,
is that
it's
I
not
have
very
not read
good.
the study.
it's not very good.
It is very good.
See, if you present me with something that a study says, I'll either have information that contradicts that, an argument against it, or I'll have better, or I'll have an argument against it, even if it's true. This is why we're here to debate, Ticky Tac. So
Yeah,
far, I have not
understand
heard
that.
a single goddamn reason why we shouldn't teach sex ed in schools, other than these things are very confusing to you.
No, it's that's just your claim.
So you're
I
confused
think
by this.
overall,
Can you steel
as
man my
far
position?
as, if you don't mind, the both of you, I do recognize if it, Furby, if we wanted to utilize the studies and be able to, as you were saying, apply critical thinking skills, you'd have to be able to dive in, because that is critical thinking, is being able to dive in, read front to back, consider the sources, cite where is it coming from, who did the study, so on and so forth. So I think I understand what point you're trying to make to Ticky Tac. However, that point actually reflects back to you and actually kind of gives him that stance even further. If you're kind of utilizing critical thinking as an argument there for the studies.
I just want to point out that no argument is good enough for Ticky Tac. He just has this belief that this cannot work, and I've pointed to him for a conceptual argument and an empirical argument. What, Ticky Tac, what would you even need to see aside from you needing to do weeks of critical thinking to finally understand how meta-analyses work before I can even get a fucking answer back from you?
I understand how meta-analyses work.
You clearly don't, because the thing I read about standard deviations there should have been a fucking eye-opener for you.
No, the thing is, my issue that
Holy
I have
fuck.
with it is that you're expecting me to take.
You're
the claim at
actually,
face
I'm sorry,
value.
but at this point, you're useless to talk to. Like, you do not have the brain power to actually refute this.
Okay.
Mel, I will say, even if you gave me like a little blip of a summary from, maybe, I'm assuming maybe a 40-page study, or even if it's a 10-page study, I wouldn't be able to just accept it on face
And you
value.
probably shouldn't be debating this.
Who?
I had to read through the majority of the literature on this subject, which, by the way, heavily
I've read
contradicts
through-
what Ticky Tac is saying. And
I read through a lot of literature, but
I
the thing is-
guarantee you, it's not just making a bunch of claims. A lot of it is heavily substantiated to a mind-numbing degree.
A lot of my stuff is heavily substantiated as well. It's just
What does that mean? What does it mean that it's substantiated?
that the statistics show the trends.
Yeah, and my statistics have also shown the trends, particularly 1.7,
So then one of us is wrong.
0.81 standard deviation, which is a large enough effect size, to be interpreted as an improvement, can only be interpreted as an improvement in the prevention-related knowledge and skills of children who participated in these programs.
Okay.
So if you don't have anything to refute it, and you don't have
No, it just goes
and
back.
you don't
to
have
the
an
same
argument that can
reputation.
to
Goes
respond
back
to the
the
face
same
of it,
reputation.
then
It's a face value claim that I can't look and verify right now. It's
so
like
I'm
I
going
haven't
to
read the study.
reiterate. Then I'm going to reiterate that without knowledge about that they have control of their own bodies, without knowledge of their actual body parts or what's right and what's wrong, without knowledge of who to go to when this happens, or what will or of who to go to and how to report it. It feels like the same thing all of a sudden, but I'm pretty sure
I
those
agree.
are different things.
I agree.
Without that knowledge of how to do those things, children are more likely to do the thing that you said that you're afraid of them doing, which is going into their shell, feeling isolated, feeling so traumatized by it that they can't do anything.
Okay.
Could we, putting that study aside, Mel, could we move forward in
Yes, of course.
conversation? Okay.
So, do you want to make an assertion or should I?
No, go for it.
The reason that so I will agree, by the way, and we probably all agree on this, that parents are the most important form of guidance in a child's life. However, I disagree that we can rely on that. And my assertion is that given that we cannot rely on all parents to provide a standardized, comprehensive sex education, we need something to supplement that in case so that way children do not become victims of either misinformation or even disinformation.
Yeah, but at what degree does it trump onto somebody's rights to say that the parent is not allowed to teach their kid some alternative viewpoint about sex education versus the public school?
I'm sorry. So when you said trumping on someone's rights, by the way, my brain went to the normal discussion, which is the opt-out policies that is actually in pretty much every state. But you're talking about people are going to start saying that parents can't give their kids the guidance that they choose?
Well, no. The thing is, you just described that a distrust in parents teaching misinformation, and I'm just wondering where your line is drawn on how much that the parents should have control over what is taught.
Okay, so let me be super clear. I trust most parents to do what's best for their child. I do not trust all parents enough to rely on that to make sure that they can grow up and know exactly what to do in a lot of these scenarios. And part of that is actually that there's often a lot of shame culture around these things, or even just discomfort with talking about this with your kids, which is, I think, is understandable. What I'm talking about is not something that's meant to replace what they say, but be supplemental, add on to it where necessary, or corroborate it even.
Yeah, and what if the parent that you have deemed has some sort of bad misinformation about sex education, doesn't want to have the public school teach them? Would you still allow the parent to teach their kids the bad information?
So no one's making value judgments of individual parents. All we're saying is that it's not 100% of parents who are perfect, which I think is a very reasonable statement.
Yeah,
when it comes to opt-out policies, just to be clear, it is very common, especially if you're religious, to opt out of a lot of sex ed curricula, maybe in some states even all of it. And I'm not necessarily against that. I think we should talk about how much of a risk that is for kids, but I think in general there are lines that should not be crossed with discussing things, especially when coming to religion and stuff like that. You certainly don't want parents to feel alienated from their children because those children are going to a public school or something like that.
So you're essentially saying that it is within the parents' right to essentially teach their kid whatever they want on sex education.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Okay. What if they were anti-LGBTQ and did not accept things like gender norms or homosexuality and taught abstinence?
So this is actually a really interesting moment for me to give kind of a comparative answer here, where in this current climate, where let's say it's in California, where the social justice side of this is taught in sex education. So most kids are already aware that these things exist and that it's okay to be that way. If I feel like I'd be more okay with the risk of them going back to a household as a trans or non-binary person, or even just queer person in general, and being told you're not okay for who you are, because at least they have that second opinion. If we're talking something where there's no curricula on that whatsoever, I'd be much more likely to say, I don't think parents should be allowed to teach their kids that, because unless they have a second opinion, that's basically just reinforcing an ideology.
Well, that's part of the entailment of the teachers, the parents being allowed to teach their kids what they want. It's also allowing their kids to be restricted from what's being taught to them.
But right, what I'm saying is that it only makes sense within the framework of having sex education, which gives them the supplemental material.
Yeah, but what if, like, let's say the parents absolutely despise the supplemental information and opts their child out from the supplemental and completely teaches them the bad information?
I think when we have those two things together, and this is just my opinion here, I realize many people will disagree, but this is my formal opinion, that is approaching a lines of child abuse. If that person is also queer, non-binary, gay, whatever, and they come out and say that and say, I'm not being allowed to learn to this, my parents are telling me that I'm awful for who I am, I think that's a case where Child Protective Services should get involved.
Okay. Um, hmm. The thing is that what exactly constitutes like child abuse that they're not being taught a particular subsect of the supplementary information that you talk about. Like, let's go on to that. Let's define what is the supplemental information you're expecting for these children to get out of their public education.
So just to keep it basic, because we don't need to get into the nitty gritty too much.
Yeah.
It would be supplemental material that tells them that gay, bi, trans, non-binary, queer, etc. people exist. It's okay to exist that way. And if you need help with these things, there are often specialized services that can help you work through it.
So why would it be child abuse to restrict a child from that?
Okay, so it's not, we got to remember here, it's not just in a vacuum with that one thing, right? It's with the compounding factors of this. There's also reason to believe the parents are telling the child that they should not be that way, on top of that child actually wanting to be that way.
But that doesn't sound like child abuse. That just sounds like a parent being a parent.
So it is keeping food from a child abuse?
No, not at all. But this is these are just metaphysical concepts that we're talking about.
So if I starve a
homosexuality and
child, you
gender
don't think
identity.
that's abuse?
We're not talking about physical. No, I'm sorry. If you don't feed a child, that is abuse.
Yeah,
I
thank
don't
you.
know.
And it's neglect, right? We would say it's abuse along the lines of neglect. And I would say that this is the same, maybe not as severe as starving a child, of course, but certainly along the lines of neglect.
But what if a child is really fat and wants to eat more food, and you tell them no?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying
Is that
starving
abuse?
now, just to be super clear.
Yeah, but the thing is that there's parents are always going to be setting limitations to children that may seem mean, but is not abuse. So it's like I'm trying to figure out what that delineating line is of like if a parent comes in and says, "No, you're not gay. No, you can't be gay." How is that abuse?
So I think it also comes into the lines of I'm thirsty. No, you're not. Well, yes, I am. I think it's valid for, first of all, for a child to think that they're gay and want to be respected for that. That validity alone isn't enough. But when you consider that, like, the rest of the world is starting to describe what's being done as a hate crime, and again, we can get into like the super nitty gritty of this if you want. What actually makes it a hate crime? I'm pretty sure that it's not unreasonable to say that that's not just neglect. It's malevolent neglect.
Yeah, but malevolence typically involves something like a physical restriction or a physical act.
No, it can be psychological too.
I would agree there is a degree of psychological harm that you can cause but that is very hard to substantiate, especially for a scenario where it would just be a parent says, "No, you're not gay, not in this household."
Well, that's why I think that we're not talking about immediately calling them an abuser, right? We're talking about having their home visited by CPS to make sure there's no abuse happening.
Yeah, I just think that's a difficult line to delineate. Like, at what degree does this go to? Like, what
I'm not
example-
a CPS worker. I honestly couldn't tell you what it's like to walk into a home and have to figure out if it's abusive or not.
Yeah,
You know?
but now we would essentially just be relying on the government to draw that line, and I don't agree with that stance either.
Well, here's the thing: is that I'd much rather rely on a government to figure this out and protect us than random people off the street, neighbors and stuff like that, because those people are way less qualified to do that.
Personally, I would like the parents to be able to delineate that line in most scenarios.
So you want abusive parents to delineate when they're being abusive?
No, I'm trying to figure out where that line is in your scenario.
So I think it's going to come down to where your sympathies lie. Like, my sympathies lie with gay people, trans people, and stuff like that, right? I want them to not only exist, but feel like they have the right to exist, just like you, Ticky Tac, have the right to exist as Ticky Tac. And so for me, it's one of those things where I believe that it's a form of structural violence. Now we can get into the nitty gritty of what that looks like, outcomes of gay people who grew up in that kind of home versus one that accepts them, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if you actually care about your child, which is what you should do, you need to accept them for who they are, especially on these fundamental levels.
Yeah, but the thing is that restricting their expression of sexuality is not reducing their existence.
But no, remember what I said? It's not just that they're restricting them, that they're actively telling them you should not be this way. You are wrong for being this way.
But that is within the parent's prerogative if they're still a child.
So, and I think that that parent is depriving them of the acceptance that most children need to be able to develop happily, so long as they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, but I'm also just trying to figure out that legal matter of like when does it
I'm not a
deviate
lawyer,
into abuse?
so you're taking this to a standard that's way
more,
beyond.
okay, moral stance of abuse.
If I may, between, I think where you really want to draw the line is where the law recognizes that line, right? So,
No,
child
I'm not a
abuse
lawyer.
would be no. I understand that. I think child abuse would be considered. It would be like neglect, actual physical abuse, harmful abuse. I don't know, because you mentioned hate speech. I don't know if hate speech would necessarily
No.
be a part of
It's
that,
not
because
considered as part of these things, but
right.
I was making a comparative analogy where the fact that we're willing to consider that as hate crimes in other situations, why is it
Right.
suddenly okay to do that to a child?
Right. I don't know if it would be considered bullying, right? Because this is your child, and
Yeah.
and that is, so I think where you would be able to draw the line would be definitely neglect. If you're not feeding, bathing, clothing, providing a roof over the head of your child, that is neglect. If you have physical abuse, like actual harmful physical abuse that is, deemed more than, like slap on the hands or something like that.
Right.
And then I think,
And I'll also agree. There's always levels of severity, right? That not a lot of what I'm saying will ever be as severe as a physical abuse, even like spanking. So
right.
we got to consider that it's all relative, and it might not matter as much to you like it matters to someone like me who has to think about like, what if I grew up in that kind of home?
Right. So I'm wondering, I think the component that you guys are looking for would be more in the mental emotional abuse side of it. And I think that that's where the area may be more gray between your conversation, is where emotionally and mentally is there abuse or harm being done to the child by the parent, negating their sexuality to some degree.
And also, I'll let Tiki Tac decide where this conversation goes. And sorry, Sarah, if you want to cut me off, feel free.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure we were kind of like all in the same realm of that.
I'm happy to agree to disagree on whether or not that's specifically abuse. I was just giving a scenario for why teachers might be very helpful in that kind of scenario with identifying those things. In general, though, I think teachers provide a lot of things that parents are just like too logistically taxed or too emotionally taxed to provide, such as having very elaborate discussions about things that make them uncomfortable with their children, or giving them the comprehensive sex education instead of, patchwork, and folks tale type stuff. I want kids to be as prepared for life as possible by being told the factual reality of sexual health.
So I'll agree that delineating line of like what is considered like abuse, it does get into a gray area, and that probably isn't something that we need to argue on the nuance. But I really am favoring onto the side of it should be like the parents' rights to decide like what their child is taught, even up to like what the public school is teaching them. So even when it comes to those nuances of like sexuality, if it's within the household that it doesn't want to be discussed, or it's not something that exists in the household, that is the parents' prerogative, because they have the rights over their child on how they grow up and how they're taught.
Okay, so what about the parents who want the schools to take that burden off of their hands somewhat?
It comes down to some of the more original points where we'd have to get into like, okay, is sex education beneficial on lowering like teen pregnancy? Is it beneficial for lowering STIs? Is it beneficial to reducing SA? And that's kind of what I was hoping to get more into, to prove my side was to prove that it doesn't have any substantial benefits. And there's other areas that we could see to develop sex education outside of school.
Okay, so before we get too deep into that, I just feel like you've created a very high bar for what that evidence would look like. You don't take anything at face value. You don't take anything that says that there's a huge amount of evidence for this and think, okay, well, if there was a huge amount of evidence, maybe I would change my mind. You basically just say, I don't want to deal with this because it's too complicated. I want to try to just.
You made a lot of accusations towards me.
I was going to say, let her finish because she didn't sound like she was done.
And I want to, and I'm sorry about those accusations. Feel free to address them. I just want to remind you that, like, one of the things I want to try to figure out from you is what would it take to change your mind? So what would it take to change your mind that for example, teen pregnancies would actually go down with this? And it sounds like you have a bar for evidence that I highly, highly doubt applies to your own stuff, because if it does, my evidence certainly surpasses that.
Bless you.
Thank you.
I don't think I have a particular position other than that I would actually need to read the studies and see what the arguments and statistics are presented. And that's where my frustration comes in, is that I can only take these studies at face value. I can't actually understand the data that's behind it because I just haven't had the time.
I mean, usually when two people debate this in academia, right, we're talking about two people who have spent their career reading all the literature on this, all the most recent publications and stuff like that.
I agree.
And when they have these debates, it's almost as if they've had a stream beforehand where they've gone through this. If down the road, I'll probably do this on my channel since it sounds too boring for Sarah's, but if down the road you wanted to go over a lot of this evidence with me on stream and we can talk about it more, there's even like I said, with meta-analyses, there's still some learning curves I need to get through. So there's a lot we could talk about, but I definitely don't think like this type of debate where we're trying to be more conclusive is the time and place to do that. Nor did I want to know what your tactics would be, because I particularly wanted to try to figure out this from almost like a chess standpoint. Like, what's my opening move going to be? And then where could we possibly go from there?
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily revealed my tactics. Like, I haven't even gotten really into it. I would say that plain and simple, I just don't know where to go with this debate because of the lack of data.
Well, okay, so are you aware? Are you aware of what the learning objectives of sex education is? From a high level, it's to reduce health risks. It's to have better outcomes for children when it comes to their financial life, their overall mental and health well-being kind of thing, which can coincide with unplanned pregnancies, trying to reduce that, reduce STI rates, reduce sexual interactions in general. So it's a multifaceted thing. But generally, it's for the outcomes of their health. So I just want to point out, curriculum is often very, very complicated. And one of the things that's happened a lot with sex ed in like the past 20 years is we've been talking about how we've almost been too focused on STI prevention and pregnancy prevention and stuff like that, and how there's a lot more to it. So I'm just going to quickly read off a list of what the learning objectives of sex education are said to be. Understanding human development, building healthy relationships, promoting sexual health, developing personal skills, understanding sexual behavior, promoting social and emotional well-being, which you also did touch on, understanding consent, that's a big one, and violence prevention. Now, I haven't brought up consent yet because I feel like that's almost like a whole debate in itself. A lot of people in this space seem to misunderstand consent and how it's supposed to work. So I don't feel like going down that route. However, do you have any problem with any of those learning objectives in particular? I would say that quite a few of them would go against people's religious beliefs, and the fact that when you're arguing for Christianity, overall it's about abstinence. And right.
It's like,
doesn't the opt-out policy take care of that? Like, if you're so religious that you need to take your child out of that program, you can just opt them out.
Yes, that does work that way. But what I'm trying to get at is that you're trying to say that there are health benefits to these particular standards in sex education when other people have completely different standards as to what's beneficial for their children. So it's like the standard is kind of subjective. So you could literally just turn this around anywhere, and I could just make the claim that, oh, we only need to teach pregnancy, STIs, or just the bare basics, and that's the most health outcomes, and let the parents decide on everything else on the social aspects.
So you would agree that the point of education is to prepare children for life, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
And that life is pretty complicated.
Yeah.
So doesn't it kind of make sense that as even life itself becomes more and more complicated, we have more kind of contraceptives and stuff out there, that the education itself might become more complex and diverse?
Possibly, but as of recently, when it comes to sex education, we're starting to get more into the metaphysical realms of what sex is and relationships, and I'm not sure if that would be appropriate to be teaching towards children.
And just to be clear, when you say metaphysical, you're not referring to anything spiritual. You just mean like cognitive, emotional, psychological.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I would agree with that, because what we've learned in like the past, I don't actually know when we started talking about this. It's almost always been a part of our talk about health, but then to actually study it and validate it has been a whole different thing. But the mind and the body are not separate things. Physiologically speaking, the brain exists to regulate the body, and the body exists to supplement the brain. So when one has an issue, so does the other. If you create a cognitive deficit in somebody regarding sexual education, then they cannot. Then they're less likely to use it in a scenario. If you give someone a psychological deficit, well, maybe they're less likely to report something that happened or talk about it. And so I think most of those things cover the idea, like if you want to cover all bases with like CSA and making sure they don't just understand what's happening to them, but also report it, then we might need some more metaphysical type education about these things, since again, not all of these things are super simple to begin with.
Yeah, and it would kind of loop back to the same contention that we're having, in that pretty much I haven't been able to identify the data to say that that kind of education for a specific case of child SA has this huge reduction, because the children have been taught these particular like philosophical aspects of sex.
Okay, but this is why I want you to kind of like address things on this face. So if I am correct in what I just said, that we need to address the mental health side of things as well as the physical health side of things, and I can show data to do that, would that be sufficient to change your mind on that?
Possibly.
Okay. See, and Ticky Tac, that's why I know you're a good faith debater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I would just say right now it really just comes down to needing to interpret the data correctly, and figuring out, because I do have studies to kind of go with the affirmative of sex education on these claims, but when I actually get deep down into the sources of the meta-analysis, there's a lot of nuances that don't necessarily reflect exactly what the data is saying in the meta-analysis.
Well, no, that's why the meta-analysis exists, because it literally is doing I don't want to say mathematical functions. It's doing a bunch of math to weed out what would otherwise be noise. And there's always noise in data. It's not until you kind of aggregate it and analyze it to see trends that you actually start to eliminate that out. And not just trends, but like, as I pointed out, you can look at comparative things like, lists of states and their sex education grade according to Psychus versus teen pregnancy population. Now, I will admit to you, I could have put that in a table. In hindsight, if I knew we were going to be this deep into it, I would have. But I mostly just like visually looked at it and was like, okay, Louisiana's third on the list. It's still got to be F, because Mississippi and Alabama were F. So, and it was. So just trying to point out that there's many ways to handle data, even heuristically, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Anyways, I feel like that was a good discussion. You certainly made me feel like I did not come somehow prepared enough to explain these things better, but I probably have to reflect on that.
All right. We'll do a personal stream on our channels. We'll just go through the data. I think that would be a better subset or a better discussion.
Sure, yeah.
Any other little talking points you guys wanted to get into? If not, we can do closing statements and go into open panel.
I'm willing to go to open panel. I want to hear other people's ideas.
Me too.
Mel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. Ticky Tac, if you want to give your closing statement.
Yeah, so I'll just come in to say that I remain unconvinced that sex education is beneficial in the to a substantial amount to where we need to have it required in schools. I believe that more of that responsibility should be put onto the parents. I believe promotion of contraceptives is also a great avenue to reduce STIs and teen pregnancy. But my mind could be changed with more relevant data as I go more study on this. And thank you very much, Melanie, for putting up my bullshit, and thanks, Sarah, for hosting.
Yeah, no problem. Mel, to you.
So yeah, I think it's been a wonderful debate tonight. Thank you, Ticky Tac, for holding me to a high standard. I remain unconvinced that I haven't met what would otherwise be sufficient criteria to convince someone that this should be done. I feel like it's really easy to say, like, I need better evidence, I need better data. There's going to be plenty of scenarios where there could always be better data, but at some point you just got to admit that things are not working out in your favor. There's just more evidence against you than there is for. And when you reach that point, I think it's important to just step back and be like, what am I really arguing here, right? Am I arguing that they really need more evidence, or am I just arguing that I wish I had more? I feel convinced that Ticky Tac wishes he had more evidence, and I could only wish that scientific communication and memorizing all of these studies and who wrote them and what said what was just that much easier for me. Things could always be more ideal, and I guess this is just one debate where if everything was ideal, maybe somebody would have won.
Fair enough. Thank you to both of you. And bear with me on some of these. Uh-oh. We lost you. You good? Uh-oh. It looks like his Wi-Fi dropped out for a hot second. We'll keep trying.
Oh, I think my camera died.
Yeah, that's okay. You're okay for right now, where you made it through the whole debate. It works.
And I forgot to say thank you for hosting the debate. And
oh, you guys are most welcome. At least that was pretty civil in most of the ways. Bear with me on some of these, Mel. Bear with me on some of these super chats, and you are more than welcome to respond at your will. Or we can just tell them to fuck off. Either way.
they'll probably get more mad if I don't respond, right?
It's up to you. I mean, I think they're meant to throw digs around. Most of them are digging at you. There's a few actually good questions in here, but Rude Cunt Crab in with the $10 says, keep this fox away from the little ones. Mud with his 1 month membership says, can you land your plane in the ocean?
Yes, it's a seaplane.
Seaplane. K2 keep on trucking. Mel sex ed teacher was Mr. Garrison for sure. Is that South Park?
Yes. I would actually like to say something interesting. I have had so many different sex ed classes that I went through, so many different types of teachers, different ages. I think my first one was like when I was 7, and then several when I was in my teenagers or teenage years. And, you know, it definitely helps. Like I'm not a parent, and I don't want to be. I don't have any STIs, but I've had plenty of sex.
Fair enough. Mud with the big 5 says, funny how adult people who are obsessed with talking to kids about sex always have backgrounds or artwork or avatars that are for the children. You're welcome to respond, Verby.
That's just what's funny, because this is literally just like, it's a reference to education. I didn't do this because I thought some kid would see it and be like, oh, that's such a cool background. I did it because it's thematic.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Mud with a big 2 says, not accusing, just noticing. I'm about 97% accurate. And that's a follow-up from his last.
Well, yeah, well, I'm 99% accurate, bitch.
Lost Ronan 25 with the big 50. Shout out to you. It's already proven that half of all peer-reviewed research is false or faked, and psychologically is a soft science heavily relying on perspective and self-reporting, making it impossible to prove anything psychologically, flip-flops all the time on its theories. You're both welcome to respond.
Yeah, so all I would say on this is that that is true. However, that doesn't mean that there are not studies out there. They're not valid. It's this is where you kind of have to be tedious with every single study that comes through and figure out what what does have like the substantial backing behind it to support their claims.
And I do agree that like it's important when you're scientifically literate to use critical thinking. I just don't think that like a debate like this would be the most efficient way to use that critical thinking between two people. When this is why we do meta-analyses and literature reviews, even for like the hard sciences, by the way. It's just a lot easier to do those ones because at the end of the day, this is a soft science. You can get from the same application, you can get wildly different results, and it still doesn't tell you which one's recreatable because humans are chaotic. We are nonlinear systems, and I'm not going to get too deep into that, but it's hard to say that because a human does one thing, that means X, right? Or if they do another, that means Y. That could still just mean X, but they just decided to do a different thing in that case. And because of that, I would agree that it's possible 50% of it is false. I haven't seen any actual scientific research papers that prove 50% of it is false. But it's much more rare that it's faked. There are certainly scientists out there who try to grift, but the majority of the problem comes from them being like ideologically driven. And that can happen from both sides, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, even I would say that that really comes down to kind of like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. For every scientific research, paper data that you're pulling from, you still have to be mindful and your due diligence comes into play on the credibility, who you're getting this from, where is it coming from, so on and so forth. And I think that that's kind of the biggest factor when you're citing information overall over anything.
And just to be clear, like there are some subjective elements in soft sciences, but they're still trying to be as objective as possible. And you got to give them credit for that. Like that is an uphill battle. That is a huge task, but that's what they dedicate their lives to. And I do trust them more than the majority of people who say come on these panels to try to give counter information when they say this is how something works. I do think that they have more authority on these issues.
Yeah, quite possibly. Lost Ronan with the big 5 says Mel is so annoying and disingenuous because of his, her, it biases. You're welcome to respond, Mel, if you want.
Yeah, so I check my biases often. I'm always looking for strong enough arguments that are good enough to make me reconsider my views. Frankly, I've been debating for 4 years now, and I feel like countering those situations have become few and far between. The only thing I have bias for is bias for the truth.
And Justin with the big 5 says, if sexual interaction with children is abuse, why would LGBTQ plus education be necessary? What does sexuality have to do whether it is abuse?
So we're not teaching kids about that to prevent about the LGBTQI plus tent to prevent them from sexual abuse. However, there's a little bit of conceptual overlap where someone who feels ashamed for being that way might feel like something that happens to them is something that they deserved or that they did to themselves, because we haven't taught them about bodily autonomy or consent. All these things do kind of interplay with each other at the end of the day because of how complex sexual health and sexual relationships between people can get.
Any thoughts from you, Ticky Tac?
So I wouldn't go to the grounds of saying that LGBTQ is necessary, but I do think that there are words that need to be defined and people be aware of. But I don't think it should go beyond that.
Fair enough. Chairman of the board comes in with a big 10. It's abusive to teach kids about things like the Furby. The Furby just wants to indoctrinate children into thinking people like him are normal and good. His condition is a delusion that needs treatments. Furby, that's all you.
So, funnily enough, I would not want to teach kids that all trans people are good. What we're saying is that it's not wrong to be trans simply because it's not normal. But I've met plenty of trans people who are just awful people in general, and who I would never want to associate with. Blair White's a great example. Nobody is saying trans people are perfect.
Nope, that's fair. Justin with the big 5 says, what does developing personal skills mean in sex education? I believe that was part of your list of things for advantages.
Yes, and I'm just making sure I go back to my notes. So that would be fostering decision-making skills, critical thinking, and the ability to communicate effectively about sexual matters.
Okay, that's fair. Jess Gerald with the big 10. Ticky Tac looks exactly like he sounds. Young Jay Dyer looking motherfucker.
I think that's a compliment.
Yeah,
I think, definitely.
Maybe I should become a comedian.
Oh, is your puppy there? Is that your puppy? Oh, hi.
Puppers.
Aww.
We love puppers.
Wait, no, I'm jealous. It's cuter than me.
Orca speaks with the big 5. You've gone through so much education, yet you do nothing to further your species. You disproved your position with this statement.
That's if you assume that we only further our species genetically. But like, if I'm perhaps like getting people to reconsider their views and misinformation, and that prevents them from further spreading that misinformation, then maybe in just the smallest possible way, because I'm only 1 out of 6 billion people, that can be a way that I can help the species.
Well, I guess it kind of depends on like what exactly is your like ontology or your purpose. It's the idea of like, are you following along with the biological aspects that you need to pass along your DNA? Or is it a metaphysical concept to pass along your ideas and your culture? So yeah, it's but the thing is, I think this will go into kind of the tag atheist type argument that there's no justification for an atheist.
I've been hearing tag a lot. I've been hearing tag a lot. What does that stand for?
Transcendental argument for God.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's I have some contentions with it. I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah, and so all I'm going to say to like the biological imperative thing is that humans are not fruit flies. We do so much more than reproduce, and the only way that how much we reproduce matters to me is at the population level, which means individually doesn't matter what a single person does, and I'll just leave it there. Sarah, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. I had a little cough and I muted to avoid. But Isabella live coming in with the big 2. A child learns teacher has bodily autonomy. Child learns teacher has. It's up to you guys.
I think that's like some sort of inference that the teacher's going to essay a child.
Oh, okay. Rude Mud Crab with the big 10. This debate should have been about giving kids access to corn for educational purposes. We did actually kind of have that on an open panel once, kind of.
And to be clear, I was making that as a devil's advocate argument to get people talking about how we can deal with the rising rates of teenagers having access to that sort of thing thanks to the internet. It's not a true position I hold that we ought to do that.
I take some pretty radical positions that I don't hold either. So I get it.
All right, fair enough. And then Lost Ronin with the big 20. Mel said earlier, trust the government. My question is, after all the proof of the government lying and manipulating media science during COVID-19, Why should we trust them not to lie in other aspects?
I don't think I said trust the government in a vacuum. I will say this: government has a lot of power, a lot of concentrated power, a lot of economic resources and stuff like that. However, they don't really have a profit motive like corporations do. So let's say I had to put it between like the private sector and the public sector, I would definitely trust the public sector more.
I would say there is profit motives within government. It's easy money. They print more money. They just sign on to a bill, you get it, and that's about it.
They can't necessarily. They can't at least easily just increase their pay based on that. There are ways, and trust me, like with lobbying and amicus briefs and stuff like that, there are plenty of ways that there's money and dark money in politics. But I wouldn't necessarily say everyone who becomes a politician is driven for the paycheck.
I think it's a lot easier for a country with a large population like the United States for a lot more like shady things to go on.
Oh yeah, maybe in the United States especially. And this, of course, depends on locally. What's your government doing? State-wise, what's your government doing? How much can you trust them? There's a lot of nuance to these sort of things.
Oh yeah.
Fair enough. Orca Speaks, coming in with the big five. Population level is below replacement rate, you were saying.
So right now, for humans to run out of people on the planet, last that I've checked, and I actually do these calculations myself, seems like it would take about 500 years for the population to get so low that we can't reproduce again. In other words, to one person. These things fluctuate over time, especially like due to economic reasons and generational differences. So in 500 years, we can have 50 generations. I'm pretty sure we're fine.
Okay.
So I would say the one of the bigger contentions that people bring up of having such a low replacement rate is who's going to be taking care of us retirees that are old in the nursing homes, and also keep the infrastructure maintained. Like
Robots.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the hope that it's going to go that direction. But I even myself have some skepticism, even working in the technology fields.
Would you agree it's inevitable? Like at some point or another, we're going to have robots taking care of our elderly.
To a degree, yes. I don't think it's going to be completely replacing people, though.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I should hope that there's at least someone in the elderly home at all times.
Okay. Last one, and then we'll open up the panel. Jim Bob coming in with the big five. Mel, if sex ed extends beyond if sex ed extends beyond procreation, should we teach kids anything and everything that produces pleasure?
So I feel like that's mishandling my argument that we aren't just fruit flies, because that was in no way an argument of what we should or shouldn't teach kids. In terms of like the pleasure-based stuff, it's well known that like kids very early on can start self-pleasuring. I don't want to be too graphic or anything. And that they might explore their bodies even before they start school, and telling them that A, that's natural, B, here's how you can do it hygienically, and C, by the way, if you do more, just be aware that could be dangerous. That could be useful stuff, right? Like I understand why it's uncomfortable to say to a child, for example, anything to do with sticking stuff up the butt. I don't even want to talk to kids about that, right? But at the end of the day, like if one child is likely to do that and then gets this massive infection because they didn't know the risks of it, and we could prevent that to me is like I think we can only speculate about the harms of them knowing that, but there's, again, a lot of data that suggests that kids can actually really handle this, and that if anything, they're almost like less likely to overreact to it like than adults are. Like, oh, like, oh, stuff up the butt, right? They're just like, oh, okay, I guess that's something that exists. And I kind of remember that from when I was going through sex ed at the age of 7. Like, I wasn't traumatized afterwards. I wasn't looking to have sex or anything. I was just like, oh, okay, sex is a thing adults do, and that's how they do it. Whatever.
I think the greater context of the question is that generally sex education is spouted just to kind of reduce harm, whereas as soon as you start introducing these things like homosexuality, gender identity, or even just like physical interactions, these are based off of a pleasure motive on how to exercise their pleasures appropriately. So if you're able to allow that under sex education, how far does that go in teaching kids of like other pleasurable things, like maybe like, you know, using drugs instead of preventing drug use? Now maybe we should promote safe drug use or stuff.
Okay, and we're getting
So
more super chats, and I know. Sorry, I just want to make sure I can say something because
Sure.
we're getting more of them, and we have people waiting backstage. Shirley,
Oh, it's okay. I'm gonna after this super chat, we'll go ahead and open the panel, and then any other super chats coming in, we'll come back to those here in a little bit.
okay, cool. Sorry, Ticky. So just let's not keep them waiting too long. I don't think it's reasonable to explain being gay or trans as just like a pleasure motive. So I'll just leave it there.
Okay, Ticky Tac, did you have any other thought process to add to that? I know you were kind of.
I'll rant
okay,
on forever. Let's get on with the super chats.
That's fair. All right, let's go ahead and open the panel up. We will go into it. All right. Rules of open panel. Shut the fuck up when I start talking. You can boot people off the panel, but you cannot boot the original panelists. So Furby and Ticky Tac, you are safe for the rest of the evening. What the fuck? Be mindful of shit like that. Any type of. Why are there two of you, Dustin?
All I have to ask is, who the fuck has a landline now?
Yeah, seriously. Unless that's a phone ring. Dustin, I'm guessing you're switching over maybe. I'll pull up the other. Dustin?
I'm here.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good deal.
I know I'm going to get booted so fast. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll try and sneak under it. What's up? I thought everyone, Melanie, Ticky Tac, I thought you both did amazing. I have one question. So as a parent, I know there are hundreds of millions of very stupid parents in the United States. So what would you say to me if I think, look, sex education, we're stacking boxes, the data shows it works. You know, I have good reason to believe that it's going to make people think more responsibly about relationships or about just the medical issue, just the health issue of sex, right? That's all I care about at this point in time. And so, you know, speaking very broadly and generally, if we have data, if this is something reasonable, if it's mitigating, you know, just the American lifestyle, you know, everybody's getting after their goals. I'm almost going into ketosis personally. You know, I got my 5-10 miles in this morning. Why wouldn't I support, you know, a well-tempered program in the public school system, which is going to improve a lot of lives? Thank you.
Yeah. So I would just say that if we have like a hypothetical scenario where all benefits, the benefits are 100% overall better, then yeah, we would go to promote it. There wouldn't necessarily be an issue with that. I think the contention comes in is that when it comes to sex education, it started out with just with this idea of like, okay, let's just reduce the amount of sex people have so they don't have that we reduce the pregnancies, teen pregnancies, STIs. Okay, maybe we need to raise this a bit to make them aware of like STIs, so they know how to handle it.
Classic Catholic natural family planning, but made into a secular school context.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah.
And I think where our the big conflicts are coming in right now is there are ideas that are counterintuitive to religious perspectives and even just some people's like moral oughts. Like there's plenty of atheists out there that are not fond of LGBTQ at all. So this is where it's like, okay, where's that line of, do we just reduce the harm and on the very basic minimal, or do we start introducing these more like metaphysical aspects of sexuality, and where's that line that we draw? It's I just don't know where that line necessarily is.
Yeah, I don't see where
for the longest time throughout history, the very firmest lines have always been drawn by parents, okay? In all reality, what you're talking about is a subcategory of a product that's considered labor, right? And the reality of that is when you're trying to say that education into sex is somehow increasing the productivity of your labor force, there's a contradiction there, because one way or the other, you're going to be exposed to these concepts. Now, is it safe when it's done by a teacher? There's suggestions that say that it is, but there's also damage that comes from that.
Yo, I'm not going to let you keep talking. Sorry, I'm not going to let you keep talking. You know, the history of education in the U.S. goes back to A&M schools, plain and simple, right? That's as fucking country as it gets.
You're not going to let me. You're not going to let me keep talking.
And the second thing is we've always had.
What's the second thing? Was there a third thing?
We've always had.
Is there a fifth thing?
Assembling that.
Is there a second thing? What was that second thing?
Hold on.
We've had all three of those things. We've had good schools and guns.
I don't know.
Sorry, Sarah.
Well, anyway, I was almost done with what I was going to say. Like, I just had one more point. Okay, so anyway, the reality is anytime you put another person in your life, there is a degree of uncertainty. So is the teacher the right arbiter? Maybe. Is the teacher not? Depends.
I don't think anyone's saying teachers are arbiters, right? You know, they're delivering a curriculum. So that's a fine distinction that obviously you missed.
What was the curriculum? What's the purpose for the curriculum?
Also, it's worth pointing out you're going to have multiple teachers throughout your life, right?
Is that like you're standing up to the question? What is that?
It's a simple question. What's the purpose of a curriculum?
So yeah, that's a good question. Let me talk about that for a second, because that's actually extremely important, and it's been kind of missed in this conversation. Teaching kids complex social views, it destructs their ability to reason independently, right? So when you're taking the school system into the position of teaching all of these really difficult things that you actually have to have an adult brain to understand the full consequences of, it gets into a realm of indoctrination instead of teaching, right? You're supposed to be teaching children.
That's only if you don't teach them to critically think.
Yeah, by giving them complex social issues and telling them it's good, instead of letting them grow up as adults and learn how to reason independently and then make their own judgment, right?
So it's
propaganda.
Why should we be teaching people it's bad to be gay?
Well, because it's degenerate.
Wait. Who says? No. Hold on. If there's a stigmatism around being gay, it's because that there's a reason for it. It's not because we're teaching people.
This is
what you're doing. You're trying to force compliance rather than acceptance. There's a difference.
So the reason is that when there's like a normative group, right? They tend to deem anything that's.
Are you serious? A normative group, and we should bow to the normative group should bow to the minority for what reason?
No, what normative groups tend to do, by the way, is they tend to assume by default that any group.
You're not going to answer the question, are you? Why should the normative group bend to the will of the minority? It's a simple question.
Right, but I hadn't finished what I was saying when you asked that. So let me finish what I'm saying first. What normative groups tend to do is they default to assuming that the minority group is inferior by default. And all we're trying to say is that no, we are not inferior by
No,
default.
it's not about inferiority or superiority. It's about you want to install an ideological mandate that'll confuse kids.
And you're
minds.
you're enforcing compliance. Absolutely, I agree with you.
So the ideological mandate is telling boys and girls that they have to identify with their genitals and anything else is wrong.
No,
What we're telling them.
What are you talking about?
Actually, let me ask that question. Why would we, if we didn't teach it at all, then we wouldn't have to worry about what is being forced or what's being not and what's being this and what's being that. If we left it to the parents, then that's up to them on which way they want to go in that direction.
Well, this comes back to what we're saying about
No, but Sarah, you
having a
and gay
second
bros,
opinion.
you and gay dudes are both gonna be going out into the workforce. So are trans people, and they're going to be encountering these types of situations not only in higher education, which everybody knows increases your likelihood of achieving a higher W-2 in the United States context, but they're this is also
let me phrase a question for you a little slightly different. Why do I need to know where men prefer to stick their dicks, and why do I need to know what women prefer to do with their vaginas? Why do I need to know about other people's sexuality in order to get a job and operate within the community and society and culture? Why do I need to know what you do in the bedroom as a young child?
So I think that question is disingenuous. Nobody is saying that you need to
It's
know.
not disingenuous.
It's not.
You're dodging the question.
Let me rephrase it a little bit differently. Why do I need to know about what you prefer to do in bed in order to function, for me to function in society?
That's still disingenuous. So
it's not.
It's not disingenuous.
If I may, as a
answer,
Sarah.
Hold on. Let me ask you this.
I just want to. Can I answer your question?
I would like
Furby,
an answer.
Furby, do you know what I do behind closed doors?
No, and I agree with you. I don't want to know that, but that's not what we're teaching kids. We're not teaching kids to care what their neighbors do.
You are so full of crap.
Let me guide it a little bit differently.
What we're teaching them to do. Can I please just land my plane first?
Let me land mine first. What I'm saying is, we can teach biology, we can teach reproduction and how that operates, we can teach the functionality of a penis, of anus, vagina, so on and so forth, and how it operates in a biological function. That I'm okay with, okay? But when we're going out and teaching a little bit further on all of these different sexual endeavors to young children, as low as 5th grade, might I add. 5th grade was when that permission slip came home from school on this is what your child's going to be learning. And they don't specify a whole lot of shit in there, by the way. They just say, are you okay with your kid being taught sex stuff? Why do we need to go any? Why do we need to push any further on what happens behind closed doors outside of just biological reproduction and functionality?
I agree with you. I don't want to know what you specifically do behind closed doors. What we're teaching kids is that not everybody, despite often seeing this more often than gay people, is going to be straight, and that is okay. You should not have to. If you turn out to be that way, you should not have to feel bad for that. Now, you talked about teaching biology. I think that there's a component to biology which we take for granted when we only teach heteronormative sex ed, and that
heteronormative.
Is assuming that everyone will always be attracted to the opposite sex. When we also have, for example, health advice for people who aren't attracted to the opposite sex, then we make sure that regardless if you, Sarah, turn out gay or straight, that you will have the information you need to help you in life.
That's a bunch of horse crap. You're telling me that. No, look. No. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but so Furby, listen. You're right. We shouldn't be teaching sex ed in schools. Thank you for pointing that out.
That was incredibly disappointing.
If I may, Sarah, just because I like to try to be the voice of reason. Might sound crazy
Why are
from
you
me.
coming in as Trixie Man today? Did somebody?
Because the ladies were calling me Trixie over on the other.
Who is this?
Oh, is that your stripper name?
It was what the drag queens used to call me. Yeah. So
wait, who is this?
It's 10th Man.
10th Man.
Oh, hi. Okay.
So this is the issue. This is just the way I look at it. So, and I know I've had discussions with you about this before. I guess you're called Furby. I don't know. but I never really got a chance to fully explain. So, like my best person when I got married was trans. Right? We used to go to the beach. They had the mastectomy scars, no problem, right? Had no problem with it. And then that was, 10 years ago. And then right around that time was when the T stuff started getting really pushed. And, it was added into LGBTQ before that. I kind of was like, man, I'm not all right with this, but I didn't make a big deal about it because I'm just like, all right, acceptance. But then they started talking to kids about it. And I understand what you're saying, but to answer Sarah's questions, because Sarah, it's part of the fetish, all right? It's part of the fetish to include kids in it. It's highly offensive to me. It's LGBTQ. That's the beginning and the end of the discussion. If you want your own organizations with your T and your I and your 2S and a plus symbol, which is P for Pedophile, I'm not getting involved. I'm not getting involved in it.
Capture all that then, buddy. Just capture
Take me out of it. Take me out of it.
Real quick.
And then the last part.
You'll entertain it. Just one quick question. Is it a fetish when people tell kids that they're straight and enforce that?
Why did you bring fetish into this?
I've never ever one time saw a adult human being pre-2008 walk up to a child and say, I'm straight.
Trixie.
So what you're saying is nonsense. That's the problem.
We're walking down the wrong road here.
So the way that you figure out if something is a fetish is if someone walks up to a child and says that they are that thing?
Yeah. He gave him fuel for his fire.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Sounds pretty stupid.
Because I had this discussion with a friend of mine that lives close to me. I never met him in person yet. His name's Jason Gadet. He's on YouTube. I've known him for 6 years. I know his family. I know his kids, but we've never met yet. We used to talk backstage during the pandemic and stuff, right? And I had this discussion with him, and I said, so what do you think I would say if one of your kids, I was over at a barbecue, and they said, hey, 10th man, Uncle 10th man, you're married to a man. That's weird. How come you're not married to a woman? I said, what do you think I would say, Jason? He said, well, I figured you would say that that's okay. I said, no, go talk to your parents. Ask your parents about it. Not a thing I'm comfortable with having a discussion with a child about in the first place. And the fact that anybody even considers that other than basic biology, like these people are saying, anything other than that you're talking to kids about.
When you're just operating from disgust, though.
You belong in jail. You belong in jail for talking.
I believe that is the smartest, straightforward thing you have said. Now, here, can I'll wait.
I do want to kind of bring a thought process in, Mel, because 10th Man does hold a solid point in that factor in terms of would I want anybody coming up to my child and explaining any form of sex or sexual natures or fetish or anything like that to my child? I mean, that is up to the parents to elaborate their foundations to their children, how they want, when they want. The timing is of the essence. Only you know your child best. Now, I will say there are those exceptional parents that aren't that great at doing much of anything, right? I think that there are shitty parents out there, but we have to accept that they're shitty parents, and it's unfortunate that we run into that. But I think that the way a child views their body and their sexuality and all of those things, that's left to the parents to provide the information, because it's honestly, the child just comes in asking questions. Everything's why, what, who, where, when, how, blah, 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 blah.
We're all born with the exact same level of education.
Hold on. Tomato is making an exactly great point. Tomato herself, the host, is saying the exact great point that it is up to her as herself. She birthed children on this world, or can birth children on this world.
Sarah,
are you going to override her opinion of?
I'm going to explain.
I
can't.
Are you going to explain?
Hold on, God. Go ahead, Mel.
I can't figure out if you believe that the information that parents give their children is actually something that they can take to the bank, because it sounds like
none of your business.
It sounds like
to the bank,
G.
to the bagel.
Triple G, Triple G. Give him a minute. Let him stick his foot in his mouth. Just give him a minute.
It sounds like it's not robust enough to stand up to what they're actually going to learn into schools. And that's actually what most people are afraid of. If you were actually confident in what you were teaching kids, then why wouldn't you be secure in the knowledge that they're going to hear something else at school, but you've already taught them better?
Somebody needs to hold his feet to the fire.
Let her speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Damn it.
Let her speak.
Boot you the fuck up. If somebody wants to do me a favor in the chat and get loudmouth off, please feel free to do so. Thank you kindly. All right, listen.
Goodbye, sir.
So I hear what you're saying, Mel. I understand like there can be a competency issue, yada, yada, yada. But people have been teaching their children about sex for a very long time. I mean, how does this information get passed down? Usually it would come like the mother would explain to the daughter, father explains to the son, so on and so forth. I've already told my ex-husband, like when our son hits it, like he's all yours, please take that time to explain those things, you know, whereas my time with my daughter is very important in explaining it the way that I choose to explain it. Right? It doesn't matter if it's sufficient enough to a curriculum level or what the government deems as the most important factors, because it's my fucking kid, right? Like what happens behind closed doors, right? Like that's a whole very meaningful piece. The right to privacy is very important. This is why, like for instance, gay marriages even pass because they don't care what you do behind closed doors. Like keep that back there.
Sarah,
but that information, Jesus fucking Christ.
Can I say a dad point?
Hold on. Hold on. At least let me land my plane. Okay, I'm already frustrated. Haven't you figured this out yet? So in essence, if the government's not tapping into what you do behind closed doors as an adult, what would it be their business to tap into what children are learning from their parents and determining whether it meets a criteria or is sufficient enough for this, that, or another? Doesn't matter. That's the information that I'm willing to provide to my child on my terms because me and their father have deemed that sufficient for their learning style, their capacity, their age level, and so on and so forth.
I feel like we've reached an impasse.
So you've been shut up, all you liberals, for a second. Is that tomato? No, shut up, all you liberals, for a second. Is that tomatoes explaining to you divine love?
Number one is that
tomatoes.
Hold on, God, Doc, you got 20 minutes already. Sorry about that. They see
You're welcome, Sarah.
B-Twix seems to have a thing for you for some reason. I'm thinking they're in love, but 20 minutes.
Good man, making Sarah money. Can I make two? Oh, you have one more chat, but can I make 2 points quickly after that?
And loudmouth Dustin, you got 5 minutes in the back too. All right.
I promise you I'm going to speed run this, guys.
All right,
number
go
one
ahead.
point is that sex education, which only gives the heterosexual side of sexual health and inherently excludes gay people and discriminates against them. And the only way that you can possibly deal with that is if you try to figure out who's going to be gay or straight, which is discriminatory as well. Therefore, it's better to teach all of it all at once. Secondly, like I'm going to revert back to what I said. You should be confident in the information you're teaching your child if you're sure that it's robust and will stand up to the real world that they're going to experience. If you aren't, then it's probably better to leave that to someone who can.
So I'm going to agree with you, Furby, that sex education.
I'm going to take tomato side.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to say something conservative. You'll like it, and then you can go. All right. So Furby, listen. You're right that sex education is inherently discriminatory, which was why I said before that you were making an argument for abolishing all sex education. But if you believe that all of humanity should not single out specific issues, right? That's your complaint, right? The heteronormative. We shouldn't be singling out specific ideologies.
No, we shouldn't discriminate.
Fragmenting society, right? So just leave it up to the families to deal with. That way we're not imposing fascist ideals through the government like you want, right?
Make a children to brainwash them into what you think, all right? Is that cool with you? Is that cool with you that the fact that you get to make your own children some miracle way, oh, miracles don't exist to you because you're gay or whatever, right? Like I'm just gay with the G-H-E-Y, like spelled that way. I'm saying, like, I'm not going to discriminate or take away your choice from doing these things. But if you're going to adopt somebody, you go ahead and teach them how to make another one of you. All right? If you're going to take away that thing from people, is that now you taken away the parent's right, and a parent's right is the most optimal right. It's the man and the father of the child itself. I get it. Adoption happens, and I'm happy for adoption. My heart goes out to adoption, and I support you guys. Thank you for whatever the hell that you guys are doing. Besides, you're teaching them not to procreate. But I'm very on your guys' side. I want
Doc,
not abortion laws.
God, are you drunk?
Are you drunk?
There's your answer.
Shut up for a while. Okay, I want to add a little extra spice, Mel. Let's pretend we're gonna follow your lead here on the government should be teaching because it's a specific criteria. We want it to be sufficient information. Hold on. We want the teachers to ensure there's no biases, and we're teaching all sorts of the LGBTQ, so on and so forth. Will the school then incorporate the Christian foundation of what we believe, in terms of abstinence, virginity, how
right way, one love,
how the Bible views, sex between a husband and wife, and reproduction and what it's meant for, the intention, so on and so forth. Will the schools then incorporate Christianity into a part of their teaching?
So comprehensive sex
education. Give them an option.
God damn it! I'm putting you to the back. Shut up.
Yeah.
Welcome to the adult table. Thank you, everyone who's still here, not being retarded. Thank you.
So comprehensive sex education means giving children the best information possible. And one of the best things we can tell children is actually abstaining from sex is the best way to prevent pregnancy and STIs. That is still taught even in the most secular and diverse sex education because it is just true. That is the only way you can fully prevent those risks. However, going back to kind of what Chairman said, like I don't think that, and I kind of forgot my point, but I'm pretty sure that the point isn't anything to do with sorry, you know what? I forgot what your point was. Now
I'm going with if they're gonna teach my children sexuality, sex education, so on and so forth, will they in addition incorporate Christianity into that conversation and what it means, or what their view and foundation is on that?
Well, I don't think you need to teach them about God, but like the abstinence thing for sure. By the way, Ticky Tac, can I give Ticky Tac a W real quick? And this is such a side thing, but you won the sobriety maxing contest because I had a toke right before the debate, and then I was like, "Fuck it, I guess Ticky Tac wins." Not even that it was a contest, but I'm just going to give you a W on that one. You won that you won that unofficial contest. Sorry, Sarah, for cutting you off.
Well, frankly, I wish I was a little bit tipsy right here because it'd be a lot more entertaining.
Yeah, so I think Sarah's point is that secular normative sex education is taught, and she doesn't like secular normativity.
Thank you.
Okay, but that's like that goes both ways. And like I said, if you were so certain that like what you're going to teach your kids stood up to like reality, the test of time, all the other information that they're going to, because it is superior knowledge, then I don't think you have much to actually worry about.
Like secular normative hate speech.
No, I don't think that's hate speech.
So I'll just say this. In this instance, like because I'm Catholic and we don't really have an inkling for the like in terms of LGBTQ, right? That doesn't bode very well in the Catholic family, right? So if you're going to teach like there can be gay people, well, why wouldn't I be able to say, well, wait a minute, we don't teach that. Like that's something that we view as a sin in the Catholic church. So are you going to teach all of it then? Or are you only going to pick and choose like which pieces you want to teach in terms of whose standpoint?
I don't know. I hope I'm not being dismissive, but what I'm trying to say is that like if you taught your child that it's a sin and you're a good parent and you've really like demonstrated to them the importance of not sinning, then I don't think anything that they can learn at school will trump that. I don't think they're suddenly going to be like, well, I guess my mom's okay with me sinning now. Like, no, they're still going to know that you don't want them to sin, that you're going to think it's a sin and stuff like that.
You get rebellion out of kids.
I think we treat kids like they're this constant tabula rasa. Like, sure, they're born into the world tabula rasa, but you are the first person who gets to put any idea in their brains, right? Before they can question
irrelevant.
anything.
You're trying to talk about the entities that have the intelligence level of slightly smart pigs. Children are dumb as rocks. To even assume that they understand anything to do with any of that. This is the problem. I raised a lot of kids, right? Because I'm only 51% gay, right? So I raised like younger brothers and sisters, all that type of stuff. Been around a lot of kids in my lifetime.
The only reason
the point is
pigs is because pigs are born with innate instincts.
No, it's an example. It's an example. The point is children are really, really dumb, and it's frustrating to me to listen to somebody who probably doesn't have kids talk about kids. But I don't think you've been around a lot of kids to understand that it would be really easy to convince somebody that will believe, like my little sister, that she has an imaginary mouse that we talk about and make up stories about.
You're actually wrong about the intelligence things relative to pigs.
No, I'm not.
I'm going to explain this. You should let me lay my
claim.
No,
I'm not.
Okay, cool. We should hear why you're wrong at least.
No, you can read as many books as you want. You are wrong.
So we might we might make a prima facie comparison. Like a pig will not walk over.
No, you're not a lawyer. Talk plain speak like I do. I can try to act smart too, right? But you don't know what you're talking about. All you people on these panels like to act like, oh, prima facie, is that an ought or not? What's the MSA? Blah, 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 blah. Fucking pop culture nonsense. Imbeciles.
Let's read
talking to the kids.
Let's read a couple of these super chats real quick, and I'll kick it back to you. Lost Ronan with the big 5. Mel quite literally said, trust the government in all cases. Rewind the video. Homie is lying like Transformers lie about their gender. Mel, you're welcome to respond. That was a direct hit at you.
Oh, not worth my time.
Fair enough.
Autobots roll out.
Trollololololo coming in with the big 10 says sex education should be left to the 2 people who had these kids. To think that you should teach them about sex the sooner the better is a sick thing to say.
So this is why like a comprehensive sex ed and a robust curriculum, if you actually know how curriculums are done, will always be age appropriate. We're not going to teach them anything that isn't age appropriate. And there's plenty of research that shows that age appropriate sex ed is something children can obviously handle because it's in the name.
Should they be?
Oh, it's in the name. Did you just say it's in the name? Oh my God.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
My argument when
no questions ever.
Mel, may I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Right. Has the idea of a curriculum remained the same since the first forethought of a curriculum, or does it change over time?
There was a point where something called critical curriculum entered kind of like the education systems, and it spread rapidly due to the fact that it was just more comprehensive by its nature. But since then, it hasn't had much change aside from expansion and kind of just like more nuanced takes on some of the subpoints about it.
I have a friend who failed homeschool. That is my argument.
Was his name Cletus?
Failed homeschool in 10th grade.
Okay, so what do people think about the idea?
Because you'll make an argument for curriculum, but I mean, you didn't exactly clarify what kind of a curriculum you meant. No, did you?
So any comprehensive curriculum is one where the kids come away achieving their learning objectives, which I stated before.
Well, so Furby, do you value impartiality and justice? Because all of your arguments are for tribalism and the opposite of impartiality and justice.
I literally said
because fairness rejects favoring one narrative over another, and curriculum should be universal and not identity specific, man. So all curriculums that focus on your immutable characteristics are suspect because it's prideful and subject to leading people down paths of indoctrination instead of education.
So it's not.
I sign off on that.
I'd like to respond, please. It's not tribalism. Particularly what the tribalism is, by the way, is having the heteronormative system that says sex ed only works in the way that straight people deal with it, or cisgendered, or even white in some cases. What I'm talking about is having an education that instead of assuming you will grow up straight and then leaving you to figure it out if you're not, we try to give people on both sides of that spectrum some advice.
Yeah, I thought people were born the way that you are, though.
Assuming.
Right. That's what I'm saying. There was a time there for about 15 years where gay people didn't have to be scared, and then they put a T in LGBTQ, and then all of a sudden, they're like, here come the trains. That's why one of my other avatar is the gates of Auschwitz.
They realize they're gay until like they're 14 or 15, and we want to give them the information before they encounter that.
So are they born like you, or did they get indoctrinated to be like you? Which one is it?
No, it's not indoctrination, and you can see that because when you try to do conversion therapy, it's impossible. It doesn't work.
So
maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline.
That is such.
All right, let me read another one. Betwixt, you might have actually, from this boot earlier, scared our lovely duck away because he left the backstage. So I don't know what happened.
Can't be doing that. It's a beginner move.
Yeah, you got to start small, Betwixt. Start with a couple fives here and there, and then do a full boot later. Orca with the big 2 says base tomato. Thank you very much. And then of course, Mike, I sent Dustin backstage for a little bit, short little mini timeout. Thank you. Rude Mud Crab coming with the big 10. Schools can only teach so much. Every time we introduce a minority focused education, we reduce education to the majority, and society is worse off for it. Anybody can respond.
No time to learn how to do taxes, Tommy. Got to chop your penis off.
So this has more to do with like
put it in a box.
Like how many this has to do with the student to teacher ratio, which by the way, if you want to get mad at anyone for increasing the student to teacher ratio, it's the Republicans doing the funding cuts.
No, I think it's the fault of the Federal Department of Education soaking up all the money that should have been going to education instead of.
They said only 25% of the money went to schools and the stuff. It was all bureaucracy. 75%.
You always believe everything the government tells you.
When you come down
to this guy making an argument trying to say
know what's going on. The Department of Education, we were spending like, I don't know. We were like, what was the number again? We were number 1 in spending for education, but we were number 40 in actually educating students and how well they were doing in school. So we were doing crappy, but we were pouring a bunch of money into it.
Convincing. Now
the Department of Education's been shut down, and all the things that it was doing, like providing food to children and everything like that, has been handed to different branches of the government. It's not that like everything just went poof, it's all gone. No, it was all sat through and dismantled literally, and then divvied up to different parts of the government, so that those
different branches.
Where did it go?
Have curriculum in any of the documents.
Like DHS is handling food for kids. I think it's DHS. I might have got that one wrong. But like different departments are handling the different segments, so that it's not just one department where it can have $1 trillion poured into it, and a third of that money just goes bye-bye, and nobody knows where it went. And then the kids are getting
like never have solutions to make
new math
spending work.
So like the word you're looking for is delegation.
Get rid of these things.
Yeah.
Why?
That's the solution.
If Donald Trump is this mastermind salesperson who can always make all these economic systems work so great, why can't he make the Department of Education do its spending properly?
Because anything you propose as a solution means throwing more money at it, and that's the problem.
He did.
Well, because the system itself has failed.
What he did.
You got to give it time. So it's been divvied up amongst other governments, entities, and we're not going to pour
more efficient. Wouldn't he just reallocate money where
it's all for efficiency? You're going to see a big change in it over time. Give the guy a couple of months. You know what I'm saying? Like he hasn't even been in there for 5 months yet.
This also, by the way, gets rid of like an agency that would focus on things like curriculum, the things that like actually matter when it comes to your kids' outcomes in school. And Republicans again benefit from people who have lower IQ on average.
Actually, the more educated portion actually does vote Republican. That's been known since the 80s. Matter of fact, even if you go back in time and you watch the interview with Oprah and Donald Trump, and she just threw the idea out there of him possibly running for president.
You'd agree that
majority asked him what he would run as, and he said, I would run Republican because they're known to be more educated.
Majority of Fox News viewers vote Republican, right?
Yeah, that's
Sure, yeah, that's why it's a conservative news organization.
Known since the 2010s from multiple studies that have corroborated this, by the way, that Fox News viewers literally lack nuance. They're the least nuanced people you will
I would
ever
agree
encounter.
with that. I mean, that's irrelevant, though.
I really don't care about Fox News.
Right-wing thinking. In fact, that's my personal experience from dealing with so many right-wingers through this time. So again, my point is, are you sure you're not just putting a lot of trust in somebody who definitely can't make governments work and can only destroy them? And then
you don't.
How do you know?
You don't have any evidence to support any of those claims.
The first time that the man was in office, I guarantee that you didn't sit and watch what he had to say.
So if I took an axe to the NRA because I feel like that they're a little bit too profit driven, would you feel like I'm giving it a fair chance to like actually sort it shit out? I
don't give one fuck about the NRA.
Okay,
I don't think they're a government entity either.
They're talking about dismantling the ATF too.
Yeah, shut them all down.
Yep.
See, so this argument only makes sense when you actually don't understand how government is run and how this is.
Oh, maybe we do understand. How do you assume that we don't? I'm probably 15 years older than you.
Why are we so stupid?
You clearly don't understand how this is going to hurt hundreds of millions of Americans. So
too bad. They should have had better jobs then, just like they told us. Learn to code, bitch.
Right, when we lost our oil field jobs, like this is going to hurt hundreds of millions of Americans.
For 25 years, I've had to listen to
children. All right, children.
I think it's
Earl Killer, shut the fuck up. Earl Killer, it's been a while since you've been to the panel. Welcome back, my friend. You have been quiet, though. What are your thoughts so far? Where do you want to go with this?
Well, it seemed like a lot of people in the chat just didn't go through sex education or doesn't understand like what comprehensive sex ed looks like. Fuck's sake. I had 3 different sex eds, one in elementary school, one in middle school, and one in high school. The elementary school one was pretty much just like, here's your body parts and here's your no-no zones. Middle school was mostly about periods, and then high school was all the other stuff. So it's scaled up. It's not like we're teaching little kids like how to 69 and shit. So
right, which I think most normal people would say you shouldn't start there or even like work your way there unless
but
you're retarded.
Seeing what I saw in chat, I'm not sure that people knew that. So
yeah, well, my sex education was nothing all the way up until 9th grade of high school. And you know what they did? They stuck us in a room with a gym teacher, and he put a projection screen up, and he played a video, and he was like sitting there, like damn near smoking a cigarette, like I can't wait till this is over.
And then you smiled at Winnie Cooper. We know.
Was it the video of the woman giving birth?
Beat Twix likes his control over this panel. Earl, you got 5 minutes backstage. Just hang tight, okay?
My favorite memory from sex ed is just how uncomfortable my one gym teacher was teaching the class about sex ed. You could tell he did not want to be teaching that. That was funny.
Well, there was that one, and I just remembered there was actually one that we had towards the end of middle school where this lady came in. It was around the time that we were doing the whole DARE. Remember the DARE program? This one, I think she was a cop. She came in, she read this paper, and she started talking about how like certain things were assault, basically. And she said toe and vagina, and the entire classroom just lit up laughing. And I honestly felt bad for her a little bit, but I couldn't stop laughing.
So, can I ask a question, Mel?
Can you?
Are you
able? May you?
May I ask a question?
No question.
Mother, may I?
Proper grammar is important. So you say the deconversion therapy doesn't work. So how do you square with all the deconverting transitioners?
So detransitioners do not detransition necessarily because they've gone through conversion therapy. In fact, the most common cited thing is that they don't have the supports they need to continue their transition. Which
the comments cited. I mean, so you're saying because you have an arbitrary bias based on what people agree on that's
not finished.
That's germane.
Okay, ask a question, so you got to wait for the answer, right?
So they often go on continuing to wear makeup and dressing like they used to, but just not like saying I identify as a woman and carrying like their name and stuff like that, right? The rarest cause is because they felt like that they were indoctrinated into it, especially when you poll any sample of them. When it comes to conversion therapy, what you see are incredibly negative outcomes. Even if you do get success, you actually see increased suicidality, depression, self-harm, stuff like that. And the reason is because they're having worse outcomes than the thing we're trying to treat, which is those three things I just mentioned.
That's not true. The self-deletion
Thank
rate
you.
The self-deletion rate post-transition is higher than
No, post-surgery, not post.
It absolutely is.
Guys,
That's only post-surgery, and that's actually explained by post-surgery regret.
Okay, I thought it was the exact same rate, but I have
it's the same rate.
Question.
It's the same rate. Crowder
No,
showed
it's
it 5
definitely not
times.
the same rate.
Yeah, I have a ridiculous question for you, Mel.
It's definitely not. It's definitely shut up all for now.
All right, bye.
Okay, Red Guy.
Orca speaks with the big 5, says this book is gay. Thank you, Orca. I appreciate that.
Ooh.
Go ahead, Mr. Clown Man.
Mel, if Trump tomorrow said that he was a female, would you accept his new sexual identity? And would you call him the first
First of all,
lady?
if he was a female,
Or, like,
I feel
first
like he's
female president?
trolling. Because like we all know that that's like the right wing being like, oh, biological female can't be a biological female.
He was
but do you
Democrat
believe
for the
that?
longest time?
Do you believe that I'm a non-binary,
Well, it's
transgender,
kind of
transracial, paleo, vegan ghost? It's a wolf every second Tuesday, and also a witch.
What?
Yes, I do.
Right.
I've
So-
seen you do
Because you
magic.
better, or else you're misgendering me.
So
I've
people
seen you
who
do
have
magic.
been in strong opposition to trans stuff, and then suddenly coming out of that, I think that's enough of a red flag to at least wait for them to do a transition and see how that actually goes for them.
Those have been my
Without a-
pronouns for 6 years.
I'll tell you, like I
He
personally,
practices
I
that in the
couldn't.
mirror every morning.
I have no hate towards anybody who's trans. I don't really need to have the hate. What I have the hate against or the dislike of, I'll say it's not really hate. I have the dislike of the people who want to like make the world change.
Enforce
You know what I mean?
it.
Yeah, like and like Mel's not one of those people really. I mean, sure, there's beliefs where it's like I disagree, but like Mel's not gonna go there and, like,
I
better
disagree with
agree.
that last. Mel is one of those people. He
I don't really
if
see
he
it.
was as head of a, I see. If he was the head of a teacher right now, if he was at a class, like I believe he'd have the LGBTQ flag above his head, right? But his influence has nothing to do with their personal decisions, though, right? Like he has
So-
no power
I have a question.
whatsoever,
Mel's pretty
subliminally
logical,
or
too.
otherwise.
I
I
don't
have a
think that
question.
Mel is sitting there going, you need to change the entire planet based on 0.3% of the population.
I have a question based on that. Do you not see how like the issue how when we say like okay, well if heteros or cis normative people try to change the world to make it more straight or cisgendered, that's supposedly a good thing, or we'll just say like normative in case you don't like the word cisgender.
What
If
you're
they try to make
describing is
it
Hold
disingenuous.
on. It's not the
Please let-
words.
I want to hear the rest.
It's
land my plane.
it's not the words that offend you. It's like
I heard the question
would it
mark
be
yet.
more
It's the question
advantageous?
I didn't even make it to the question mark. So
Yeah.
Would it be advantageous
not there yet.
otherwise?
There
Okay.
yet.
He's red.
So when we create this kind of dichotomy where in one direction it's very good and in the opposite direction it's really bad, do you not see how
Well-
you're just kind of inferring that like one people existing in the world is inferior and one group of people existing is
No,
what-
absolutely not.
First of all,
you're allowed to
white
express
people-
your opinion.
fuck's sakes.
One people are the weakest people on earth,
No,
right?
you
So white people that are weak to the sun in every climate, in every way, are
Let's
the
not go
weakest
there
people.
because-
So
To the sun.
no, it's okay. It's
I see
evolution.
the N-word
It's evolution.
coming.
Oh boy.
No, I'm gonna stay long away from
that.
that. I'm gonna stay long away from that. As I'm saying that the weakest people on earth are obviously the white people, right?
Folks,
And
there
any
is not
shape
in the
or
sun.
listen,
please more
this
money.
is
Should I demand reparations then, since I'm the weakest
I want
link?
some.
yes,
Hey, you know how to get 'em,
exactly.
Sarah? You got to move to California first,
Exactly.
and then you can get some.
We're
So
not
So you're
Can I-
getting it.
Can I blame it on
But-
the ozone layer and say that because of climate change.
The sun
and all
wasn't
of
strong
that.
enough to cook our ancestors to death. Yes, we didn't evolve.
Not that it didn't try.
Can you translate this? Can someone
What
translate
is going on?
It tried.
Dude, Triple G, I have the feeling you're missing your straight jacket, bro.
B Twix, where are you on this one? Where, like this is the
Okay,
shit.
I'm trying to trump.
This right here, B Twix, this is what you should be booting from panel.
This guy's going to be down to 50 cents a minute quick.
So I wanted to bring up something.
50 cents a minute? That's high profiting.
I think
I was going to say I'd work for 50 cents a minute.
Our word? Did you say our word?
So why is it that since between 2013 and 2023, the number of people that identify as like you, Furby, increased 422%? Is it?
Isn't that interesting?
Is it because there are more people born that way, or it's indoctrination because it became more culturally appropriate to talk about, and so more children were exposed to it?
So before we accepted trans people, anyone who was trans would usually do it in secret. They would hide it, that sort of thing. Felt ashamed about it. Now that we have
Maury or Jared,
we also have more trans visibility. And
so was it like a secret society?
No, I wish. That would have been awesome. Like witches? Oh yeah. That would have been sick.
No, that was moldy rye bread.
How come it happened to align with greater social? Is it because y'all aren't born that way? It's just the indoctrination, right? It just happens to coincide with social acceptance.
You both sound like really far away, and some people were talking over you. Can you ask that again?
Yeah. So how come it just happened to coincide with greater social acceptance of your condition? And just did it magically occur that way? Is that what you're saying? Like suddenly y'all came out of the woodwork. You weren't allowed to come out anymore. And it's not about indoctrination.
Yeah, when people stopped stigmatizing us, we talked about being trans more, and so our visibility went up as trans.
Oh, you're fish.
So Mel, would you say the same? Would you say the same? The same is relevant to MAGA, because people that now identify as MAGA because it's not as big a stigma. Should they not be accepted?
Well, no, I wouldn't go. I'd say for visibility, yeah, they're certainly more visible now that they feel accepted. That's not an argument for accepting people necessarily. Like, if there's nothing wrong with,
so then we don't have to accept the trans community because they may be just faking it.
Yeah. If there's nothing wrong with who you are inherently, then I think you should have more visibility. I can cite some notable wrong.
There is something wrong with what you are inherently.
What about inherently? Charlottesville, who started that protest, should have gotten visibility.
There is something wrong with people like you inherently. You have to get surgeries to fix it, right?
If you think so, not
all. No, most of the trans people are like, you see this healthy flesh? Well, it doesn't fit my ideas.
Yeah, you've seen it. You've seen it. You've been browsing the XXS sites.
Mel, here's another. I gotta word this so it doesn't get anybody in trouble. If there was a medication you could take that would just like stop you from wanting to transition, would you do it? I know it's a ridiculous question. I'm not trying to like.
No, I get it.
Be ridiculous about it or anything. I'm just saying.
So, can I answer this
like,
both?
If the result of the medication was that you were just you were still attracted to the same sex, but you just lacked the want to change your body.
I'm going to give a personal answer first, so that way my personal answer makes a bit more sense.
Not same sex, but you know what I mean. Like it doesn't change your sexuality, but it
makes you accept your body for what it is.
It would become cisgender. That's all you have to say.
Sure.
No,
not cisgender, but like,
oh my God,
whatever. Yeah,
I just want to
do the bedroom stays the same.
Let her answer.
So, are we TERFs?
So, I want to point out that there's an impersonal answer and there's a personal answer, and it's important that I give the impersonal answer first, because if we're talking before there was any trans acceptance, I would almost certainly take the pill because there would be no point. If we're talking now and assuming I have like unfettered or unrestricted access to like the surgeries and hormones and stuff that I want, I wouldn't take it. So to give my personal answer, financially, I'm in a shitty situation. My clinic for very complex reasons that I really am mad at them for. And I don't even know if I'll ever get the surgery, even though I want it. So I'm kind of more partial to taking the pill. but I don't like. I'm very happy with who I am today. Just to be clear.
Well,
I have a question.
Well, that
I have a
started at
question. 1
7,
second.
and everybody
Real
has
fast.
that opportunity.
Real fast.
He's gonna shoot.
So I figured out earlier, because I'm transracial and transgender, that I'm actually a black woman, or maybe Chinese or something like that. But if I got married to, if I got married to, if my husband passed away and I got married to a woman, would I be a lesbian?
I want you to be. I really do.
And would that be hot?
I don't think it'd be hot necessarily. It depends on how much
just
body hair you
I'm
have.
just asking. I'm old, right? I'm almost 50,
can I
so
identify
I
as
don't
a
understand
lesbian
how it
with a
works.
Yeah, there are actually a bunch of people. Look into Riley Dennis. Look that guy up.
So, by the way, you would still receive treatment for being a trans woman. There is no treatment for transracial people because there is no data that shows that you would actually alleviate someone's.
I don't want my hormones to change.
Malibu's most
You know,
wanted.
before all that happened, there was people just getting thrown in jail without any this or that, and the people are getting pregnant. What?
Huh?
What are you talking about?
No, that was in the news.
Oh, I followed him.
There was like a small case study that was done years ago. I can't find it anymore. It seems to have just been kind of deleted, or I'm having trouble finding it. Oh,
That's sexy.
board chairman. That is.
Is that blood?
That's tomato juice.
Look, I'm not going to
The
judge.
blood of all of the panelists that
That's
pissed
one
me
hell of
off.
a period.
Gross.
Maybe it's tomato sweat. But there was a study that was like, I think it was a small case. That's why it's hard to find again. But they had a gentleman who was considering surgery and, dressed in ladies' clothes and blah, blah, blah. And they had basically given him a small shot of a certain hormone. This is years ago. It's hard for me to remember what the hormone was. But they gave him like 1.2 milligrams or something like that. And within 6 months, he had completely stopped cross-dressing. He got a girlfriend, and he was considering marrying her. And then they lowered the amount of the medication, and suddenly he went back to cross-dressing and was, again, considering transitioning through surgery. And as I said, it's hard to find it. I don't know if I actually could find it.
Serotonin.
You know what I mean? But maybe. And they were talking about looking into this study further to see if there was anything to it. Like maybe it was just going to work on the one guy or the two people or whatever it was.
To be replicable, at least, especially if we're talking about a treatment that you would apply to people directly instead of just something that might give us answers about something.
Yeah, because this could be like
there's healthy ways of serotonin.
This could just have been like, what is the placebo effect? It could have just been placebo effect that worked if it's only one person, obviously.
There's also just the obvious truth that like not every single person who thinks that they're trans for any given instant.
Do you wear makeup?
I've known someone who only did a social transition.
I look good in makeup, like I look good in makeup.
All right, stop.
They were like, no, I think I'm more like non-binary, and I was like,
no, Melanie, no. This isn't a personal jab or any of that. I'm just asking
who they
are. Just asking.
I am also non-binary.
Explain here because it's one sentence. People have to inherently explore who they are.
Yes.
Okay. Well, waterproof makeup isn't good all the time.
Sorry, you're telling me,
especially when you go swimming in the sea.
I gotta wear makeup to fix the patchiness of my skin.
You would wear if you really enjoyed it because it is.
So Mel, let me ask you a question, Mel. Mel, if me and you were to get together and hook up, right, and we wanted babies, how would we do that?
Damn, Brick.
Date. You know what would happen, Brick?
So I've got a more qualitative.
Well, I can see why you went on the affirmative the last VK.
So Furby, you're obviously in a place now where you're surrounded by people who are disgusted by you, and you come into these spaces all the time.
I am not disgusted.
Yeah, I am.
For yourself. I'm not disgusted by Mel either. I'm not. Right. So speak for yourself.
Oh, I'm disgusted. So I'm speaking for myself.
It's fine.
Why do you consistently put yourself in this position? I mean, you do it on a whole bunch of different issues too, not just your own delusion, but like communism and a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, why do you subject yourself to that?
Because I look for things that have an empirical basis for being better for humanity.
Empirical? Wait, hang on. So the studies say and the stats say, and it's still wrong, but you're right.
Generally, yeah.
Mel likes a bit of
by the way.
right? That's why he does it.
Pay attention. I don't take like very specific stances on things. I don't have like policy prescriptions or anything like that. I go with a general consensus, and a lot of my takes are pretty general.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say earlier. Is like Mel's pretty down to earth about stuff, and every trans person that I know that's not like, you know, some famous internet person who's constantly doing things for you know, rage bait. Usually they think pretty damn straight, just like the rest of us for the most part. I mean,
you know what was really funny though? The polio bingo. I couldn't stop laughing.
Polio bingo?
What is that?
Okay.
No, he gave him a hypothetical earlier, and I thought it was good. I had to state that one.
Okay. Hypothetically, Thought Mage, how you doing over there? Hypothetically.
Pretty damn
doing.
Toasty.
Is it Thoth Mage or Toth Mage?
Thoth.
Thoth. Okay.
Thoth, sorry.
Then Mr. Egyptian God.
All three are acceptable, and a mage of Thoth is a student.
I feel like you're the kind of guy that would bite his toenails.
I used to actually.
I'm not that fucking bendy now.
When they were clean, but you know.
I could probably get my.
Hey, at least he's honest.
I wish he wasn't.
Prove it. Prove you can bite your toe. Prove you can bite your toenails.
Hey, that was when I
don't want to hear. I don't
even
want to hear
want to
about
know.
his toenails
Like-
while I'm eating. Get back on track, folks. Next piece, please.
I didn't realize you were eating. If
I feel like
click in
this was on track, just in a very subversive way.
Could have been before 7.
See, I'm pretty bendy. There's my leg.
So Ticky Tac.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Ticky Tac. One of the issues that I have with the debate is that you continually just let the Furby ad hominem and didn't necessarily have methods of calling him out when he basically said condescending things to you that implied that you weren't smart enough to handle specific issues because he didn't really have any substance to his arguments. And I was really upset with your inability to respond to that in a forceful way. Did you take like testosterone treatment to be more manly, or what's the deal, man?
I think it was effective, actually. It made me feel bad, by the way.
No, it's because I wasn't drinking.
With the way things are going, man, the older that we get as men, we all might end up on testosterone treatment.
See, this is the problem, Mel. I forgot what your name was.
So much you. I want to give Ticky. I just want to explain something. It's not so much you. It's a general frustration with people who have these standards, but also don't demonstrate that they can do anything with these standards or that they have any reason for having these standards. It's just a way to move the goalpost down the line so they don't have to address the evidence I have at the moment.
If I may, just real quick. So, Mel, it's not that I have a problem with you because I don't know you, right? What I have a problem with is that the year that I was born, the year after I was born, it became illegal. But in 1977, when I was born, it was legal which happened to my husband's uncle, be put into a mental institution for being gay and given electroshock therapy as the treatment. So then that all went away. So what you got to understand is people are imbeciles and they're crazy. So when it became okay for you to be gay, then it was really nice because I wasn't as scared anymore. And then they put a T in LGBTQ or LGBTQ, and then all of a sudden, nonsense. And I just want to be left alone. I don't want to be loaded onto a train.
That did sound like nonsense to me, because it sounded like you could have said, well, now it seems like trans people no longer feel afraid, so it's probably also nice for them like it is for me. But
you're bringing on the ire of the parents. As soon as you go, and also talk to your kids, then boom, now, and then they include the gays with the trans, and then now I have to deal with it.
Well, they belong together.
Guilty by association he's talking about, man.
Can I ask a question, Mel? because
Hi, Trippy.
surgically, right? I'm assuming this ability to actually transition, whether via hormones or operations, so like lots of different options, right, of which direction you can go with that. But that's only been more recent in terms of medical abilities, right? What do you think, and this is just your opinion or your thought process, for somebody who might have felt this way, let's say 50 years ago, prior to this technology or medication even being available?
What do I think they did?
Yeah, just a thought process, because this, like, being able to transition is only been more recent in terms of actual ability to change your body. So how could this have been how could there have been a solution prior to this?
Well, actually, it's interesting because prior to this, there was only really one thing someone could do for themselves, and otherwise nothing aside from the social transition of trying to wear a wig and makeup and just trying to pass, even though you have testosterone. And it was
waterproof.
And by the way, there's a lot of literature about this written by trans people or just like the history of trans people. The most common form of self-harm was a self-applied orectomy, or removing one's own testicles.
Whoa.
Oh.
And you don't think that people who
sorry,
who
Sarah?
are like you don't think
She had to
that,
do something.
you don't think that people who would take that step?
Sarah just had to throw up there what she was eating because she heard that.
I was worried it was like a TOS thing.
So you don't think
She
that
saw
people would
something
take?
Yeah.
You don't think that people that would take that sort of step, they don't need to be committed somewhere?
No.
Okay.
Same as gay people, where it's the mental illness, if anything, is the gender dysphoria, where gay people don't necessarily have that, but for trans people, it's the gender dysphoria that needs to be treated, and we see that is successfully treated by hormone replacement therapy and overall transitioning.
Wouldn't the treatment be to separate them from society so that they're not a danger to our children?
I guess the same thing would be for gay people, because
I agree. Like
Well,
I'm
wait a
not going
minute,
to argue
though.
that point either.
That would
Well,
be a
then,
danger to
why would you-
themselves, not
why would
children,
you-
if they're cutting off their.
Well, no, if they're out in
Nutectomy.
society and the children can see them and think it's normal behavior, then yeah, it is a danger.
If it's really that arbitrary, like you're just disgusted
It
by
leads
me.
to rampant degeneracy.
Okay, so if it's really going to be that arbitrary, as like you're disgusted by me, so you should be able to do this, then like I'm disgusted by you, so maybe we should be able to do that to you.
Well, I mean, you were arguing for that. You were arguing for my
Yeah.
children to
Maybe
be
we should
indoctrinated
separate
to be
you
like
from
you. You're the one
society, like,
arguing for that.
Maybe we should separate the
pushing
bigots from society, right? Maybe we should make sure that
No,
they
I-
feel like they're not welcome.
So I think
Right.
we all agree that nobody's trying to transition children, but like, I think what Mel was saying was just like, information or whatever. I don't even think Mel said there should be like a specific age where these kids are taught this stuff.
Well, yeah, any age of indoctrinating children to think that behavior is normal is inappropriate, and people that espouse that are basically abusing children by
because you're too immature to
psychological
handle
abuse
yourself.
means.
Just
Yeah, I
'cause
mean, you're basically arguing for abusing
doesn't
children.
mean all children are.
Oh, wait.
Mel, are you for puberty blockers? Mel, are you for puberty blockers? Are you for that?
Generally, yes.
Right, so you do realize that puberty is a stage in someone's life, right, that can never be taken back. So it's a part of their life, right? Say 5, 10, 15 year, whatever, for example. You don't pause that, right?
You're
you
wrong.
don't delay it. What you do is hang on, let us finish, Mel. Let us land me plane, mate. Please come on. So if your puberty is from 10 to 18, right? That's 8 years. You go for puberty. If you halt that for 4 years, that means you've only got 4 years left of puberty. You don't get another 4 years after that, right? It doesn't come back to you.
Okay,
Do you
so
not
you
think
said
puberty is what? Hang on. Do you not think puberty is the most important thing in young people's lives, where they go through an awkward situation? Yes, I get that, but we do find out who we are ultimately at the end of it. Why would you want to halt that?
Puberty cannot be gotten back, and here's where that's false. Is actually puberty can be restarted later on in life if it is halted within reason.
Prove it. Where's your source? Where's your source?
Where's the evidence for that?
I'll let you finish. Maybe you should let me finish, right? So trans people who start their HRT after they have puberty, actually, this is more of something said in trans circles, but we undergo a second puberty. Essentially, there's a lot of things that come up, especially for trans men, and like facial acne and all those things that you see from puberty in adult trans women because the body goes through.
What, like a woman taking steroids?
And so the point is that not only can you pause a puberty and restart it later on, puberty blockers are fully reversible. So if you come off puberty blockers, you will have essentially the same puberty, slightly less height on average, or slightly narrower
And
hip.
so, your medical experience with this is like firsthand or secondhand? Like what you read about it in a book, right? Because I've been researching this for over 20 years. Over 20 years. Know the people that have done this. I know that what you're saying is wrong. I could prove it to you because you're not a doctor, and I know what this is about.
1,000,000% agree with that.
And we all
I see. This is what I'm talking about. Not all gay people are like this, everybody. All the people I grew up with here in Canada don't agree with any of this. When I went to this, when I went to the SOGI protest, which is the teaching kids about this stuff in school, because my mother-in-law, I got nieces and nephews, my mother-in-law wanted to go. I streamed it live. When we went down, we had one gay guy throwing candies in Muslims' faces, like hard candies, trying to start a fight, right? A whole bunch of nonsense. They called me CSIS, which is the CIA of Canada. I was like, nah, man, I support gays without groomers. They thought I was them. I'm like, no, I just support them. Then all of a sudden, I lost the group. And I went up to the park where they were, and I was talking to people, and all the Muslim people, I was in a big group with 300-400 of them, felt perfectly safe. But then I got up to the park, and I was talking to everybody, principal, all kid parents, everybody, talking to everybody. And then I go over and talk to the LGBTQ people, and I'm talking to a bunch of them. Same guy that was throwing candies starts screaming at me to go away, and then they all, like sheep with the weirdest thing, started screaming in unison with him. And this is recorded. The sound quality's bad, but it's recorded. You don't have an audience here, go away. And they were all chanting it, and I actually got a little bit scared. I walked away. I'm like, this is starting to feel real scary.
Well, that's the nature of propaganda, right?
Story I've ever heard.
That was a story. I mean, sorry that happened, man.
It's wrong that
So, Trippy Cast, you felt more comfortable around the straight people than you did
Literally
around
The straight people, and in the center of 300 or 400 Muslim people screaming, leave our kids alone.
You said.
You deserved it.
Was this a Pink Floyd concert?
That's 10th man talking, not me.
I guess.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I can just see your arms waving around there.
You need this discussion to be as stupid as possible. I get it.
Well, I mean,
you mean what actually happens in real life that's recorded?
So, man, I don't. You is what is actually wrong about saying that puberty is something you can restart? Puberty blockers are
because you cannot.
Because it's false.
So that's not a reason why.
So once you
because you do not have one instance of it ever happening in the history of mankind, not one time. What you just said about and then they get acne. Oh, you mean from the hormones they're taking? What you're saying is nonsense, absolute nonsense. So you might be used to dealing with complete imbeciles, but when you get into this with me, you're gonna get obliterated.
Yeah, you
obliterated.
Answer. So people who have taken puberty blockers who have gone off of them, and so we have plenty of data on what happens when you go off of puberty blockers, and the data all points to it being reversible and their puberty starting again.
I don't think.
How long is this data based over, Mel? How long has this data been based over?
It's longitudinal, so as long as we can make it.
But it's irrelevant as to whether or not it restarts. Hold on, it's irrelevant to whether or not it restarts. Are you telling me you can assure?
Woo!
What causes puberty, 10th man?
He's gone. It is chemically the same medication given for chemical castration, correct?
So here's the difference, though. For chemical castration, you need much higher doses, whereas the doses that we're giving to stop puberty is something like a fifth of what's needed. Don't quote me on that; I could be wrong.
Why do you want to mangle people with chemicals? I mean, that's grotesque. I understand you're a fascist.
Then why do you want to? Why do you want to fuck with children? Why do you want to fuck with children's puberty? I think it's okay. Why don't you just let them go for puberty?
I don't understand.
Hey, you guys, we probably shouldn't direct all of those questions to Mel because she's not all of the weirdos that we see on the internet that are actually pushing for all that.
No, Mel's fucking brilliant. Mel's my favorite trans. Right? Okay, Pov and Blair White.
Nice. I'm a little uncomfortable because this lady killed some guy named Earl and I'm not really sure if she knows what my name's not Earl. That was not on that show. Okay, don't kill me. I didn't do nothing. I did.
As long as you go around and get your list completed, right, Earl?
Yeah, that's right. I got to find that lottery ticket first. Got to have some money for it.
Betwixt, by the way, you almost made me laugh with that super chat by saying 10th man is a she who is LGBT.
No, 10th man's definitely a he.
Definitely. Hey, do we all remember when they tried to add a P to LGBT? Because that was...
Yeah, that was terrible bullshit.
That was terrible.
Well, what does P stand for?
That was from Matt Walsh.
Oh, never mind.
You go ahead. You think about that off stream. And yeah, nice. You think about that for a while, and you'll realize
you're pretty gullible because that started and ended with Matt Walsh.
No, it was they were doing it in Canada. They were calling it LGBTQIAP+. No, I mean,
that's definitely never happened in Canada.
Also, it was temporary. It was temporary, but it did happen.
Wouldn't it stand for pansexual though? Not what you're obviously implying.
It did not. It did not, and it's not anybody's.
Then you just don't understand what LGBTQIA is because it has nothing to do with
it's just G.
attraction to children.
It's just G.
Yeah, but the L doesn't like the B, and the B doesn't like the T, and the T doesn't. The L, B, G, they don't like the L's. Don't like the.
Ricky, it's kind of interesting. It's like once these groups get comfortable enough, they actually start thinking about themselves as being better than other groups, and the whole.
I think Melanie Love. I am very comfortable around gay people. Okay, I actually used to work in a gay club. Right, I used to DJ there. That was the best nightclub you could ever go to for a fun time, right?
Is this story going to get us
One
anywhere?
One part of the room was really...
No, Rick, before you continue the story, is this story going to bring us anywhere?
I'm just wondering, Mel. Yeah, well, look, if you were to teach my children, right, in a classroom, if you were to teach them, would you be putting your life views out to them as opposed to doing maths, science, English, whatever? Would you be telling them what you do?
So... What I want to point out.
Wait, no, don't skirt around that. Would you?
I wasn't done making my point when you cut me off, and I'm going to continue trying to make my point. So, someone like 10th Man,
my bad. Sorry.
Someone like 10th Man, it makes sense that maybe he had fight in him one day, but he clearly has no fight left. Like he does not understand what he was fighting for back in the day, and now that we have better terms for it, like social justice, he feels left out because he hasn't bothered keeping up. This is what happens when you become complacent. This is what happens when you stop fighting the good fight, people.
I think he fought the
biology's
fact. And now you've hijacked his fight and made it your fight to make yours seem relevant and important. And he's mad about that.
And then you brought our children into it, Mel. You brought our children into it and just said you were going to tell our children how to live their life.
We fought for gay people at Stonewall. And we're very much still fighting for gay marriage.
You weren't alive then, dude. You didn't fight for nothing. You'll
definitely see trans people opposing Republican bills meant to get rid of gay marriage.
What is Republican? I despise like 99% of Republicans. What does that have to do with anything?
Do people not realize, like, at least the current president went into office even the first time pro-gay marriage? Trump's been pro that from day one.
So that doesn't change the fact that Republicans are still putting bills out there that are meant to at least weaken the legislation around gay marriage.
This is the new Republican
Party. Not indoctrinate children, to stop indoctrinating children.
No, that's what they're meant for. You're just really gullible when you listen to them saying that's what they're doing.
No, you're really gullible, man. You're really gullible. Okay, so if I'm anorexic, Mel, should my doctor give me liposuction?
Even though none of
if I'm anorexic, should my doctor give me liposuction?
Even though none of their policies that they actually push do anything or talk about children at all, it's clearly just targeting.
Answer me question, Mel. If I'm anorexic, should my doctor give me liposuction?
No, because that's not how.
Well, that's how I feel. I feel fat. I feel fat.
So that's not how medical ethics works. There's something called beneficence. Beneficence states that you need to reduce the.
You use a lot of big words that you can't even spell.
No, she is right in terms of how they determine whether it's like more harm than good kind of concept in terms of doing medical.
Intervention.
Like that. Yes, thank you.
Another pillar, by the way, is non-malevolence. Like you can't use that sort of thing to do bad.
Yeah. So
Sarah,
that goes
could I ask you a question, Sarah? Would you think it would be justifiable
Then why do
to
you-
ever step into a child's life and give them puberty blockers or surgery at all? Like, is that a justifiable thing?
Have you? I'll answer that with kind of like a series of questions. Have you ever asked a 13-year-old what they want to be when they grow up? Have you ever asked a
Yes.
13-year-old where they want to go to college? Have
Yes.
you ever asked a 16-year-old what they want to be when they grow up? Where do they want to go to college? What they want to do with their lives? How about what boy they like? What girl they like? Where they see themselves in 10 years? What their favorite color is? What name brand they like to wear? What their favorite band is? The thing about the youth is they change their minds almost every day. Like I have a better chance of relying on the wind to carry a direct answer to, across the states.
Agree. I agree.
So I think that in terms of doing these types of modifications, even if it clerically is presumed to be minimal, right? The least of harm.
Clinically?
Would it be clinically? Yeah, like in terms of I say clerically, clinically. I think that even at that, a youth's mindset, like they don't know what they want, they don't know what they think, they don't know how they feel, their emotions. Like it's a better fart in the wind, I think that overall, like I don't rely on my children to tell me, what we're going to do with their lives, right? I mean, certainly I can take a lot of considerations in terms of their interest levels or what they're good at, what they're, maybe not the greatest at or this or that, when making decisions. Hey, I'm making that decision on what's best for them. And typically the consideration in mind that you rely upon heavily is the idea that they might change their mind tomorrow.
So this is a branch of social contagion.
So the answer
theory.
was no,
By
you
the way,
wouldn't do it.
That kind of assumes that, first of all, gender does not form early in the brain and it does not have any concreteness. What we actually see is that gender does form early in the brain. It actually informs a lot of decisions children will make about their identity later on in life. And children are so surrounded by cis-normative narratives that even if they have...
What do you mean by cis? What do you mean cis? What do you mean by cis?
Telling them that they are cisgender, telling them that they are not trans, representing people who are not trans by default.
Honestly, something I wanted to
What are you talking about?
I would let you land my
Where
fucking
is
plane, you
this?
fucking triggered little snowflakes.
In all fairness, Mel, hold
Made up
on.
term.
Let me intervene on this cis thing, okay? And here's why I say it. You come up and you present as female. There are other transgenders that I'm saying is you prefer to be spoken to. I say her and she, right?
I don't even demand people do that. So
You never do that with me, and I'm highly offended.
Shut up. But the point is that I still do that, even though I get torn apart by my chat. I still do it just out of a simple level of respect, right? If
Yes, I
that's
do
how
appreciate
you
it.
want to be referred to as, I'll do it. It doesn't hurt me any. But when I say the word cis woman is insulting, I do ask for a little respect in return on that note, right?
Yeah.
So when I say I am a woman, I don't need some subtitle in front of that. I am simply a woman, right? Just the same as I respect the way you prefer to be referred as.
Okay, and I can't force you not to be an easily triggered snowflake. At the end of the day,
So are you pretending to be a cis woman, Mel? Are you pretending to be a cis woman?
Go wash your vagina, sir.
At the end of the day, this is basic language. This is the English language in motion. This is us using prefixes. One means one thing, the other means another. It doesn't matter that you feel one way or another. We use it as a descriptive form of language.
Made up shit. It's made up shit.
I
Mel.
agree.
No,
Just the
descriptive
same-
language cannot
okay.
be derogatory.
But Mel, the point
Isn't
of
made
the
up, it's a
matter-
Latin prefix.
The
It's
point of the matter
So
is
descriptive
that
language cannot be derogatory.
Okay.
If I called him a twink, I
Let
bet
the
he'd
host
change his
say
mind.
stuff.
I always, just out of
This is
respect,
Mind you, you're getting triggers that way. I can't
scientific
fix my point right now.
Call me dad.
Are you really this afraid of me finishing my point that wasn't even about cis people?
You throw out an insult and expect no response.
It wasn't
Mel.
an insult. You're just really easily triggered.
No, it's not a trigger. It's just
You're
fucking.
acting like such a fucking snowflake. You're being such a snowflake right now, Sarah.
How is that a snowflake?
Because it is not derogatory. It is descriptive.
Okay,
it is
then
merely the
going
opposite prefix of
forward,
trans.
Furby will only be known as he, him, it, Furby,
I don't
whatever,
care.
anything
Okay.
we want to do. Fine.
I don't care.
Excuse me for a
I never
moment
cared
here.
in the first place. So I'm going to land my
Mel?
plane, which is that what
Just
you were
a
saying
second.
originally was comes from a branch of social contagion theory.
No, Mel, you're not gonna. No, you're not gonna do that. Mel.
disrespectful.
By default.
Shut the fuck up. It's just respect, Mel. That's all. It's just one fucking form of respect.
Yeah, when someone tells you that it's clearly not disrespectful.
I show it to you whether you ask for it or not. Just the same as I show it to every other fucking person on this panel.
And when someone tells you that it's clearly not meant to be
Jesus
disrespectful, just descriptive, you can calm the fuck down.
It's not. Descriptive is.
Why can't you
I'm
just calm the
woman.
fuck down?
I'm
It
not
actually-
calm
I can
down.
calm the fuck down. Why
Anybody
can't you?
else want to chime in?
It
Go ahead.
actually is an
Oh
insult.
no, I
because
want to finish what I was
Because
originally trying to say.
because
You're
Sarah,
clearly
Sarah's
afraid
an
of hearing why
actual
you're
real
wrong.
female,
You're
right?
clearly afraid
Unlike
of
you,
hearing why
Mel.
you're wrong.
Mel, you've
I'm
got a
asking
bigger
you
dick than most of us men on the panel. Right?
You're
Okay, and you call yourself a woman.
You're wrong. You're never gonna
One second, guys. One second. So if I was, hold on. If I was acting this way, towards, see, this is the trick, right? If I was acting this way towards Sarah, you would say he's being misogynistic. But then what happens is, then you can just pretend that you're a woman. But I'm not pretending. I really am a woman. And then you can go into their bathrooms and you can tell them that they're cis and they're birthing persons, and you can just do what really bad men that don't like women do to women.
That sounds like.
But you get
that
the
sounds
shield
like
of
patriarchy with
saying-
extra steps.
you get to be that you have the shield of being trans. That's why I get to tell Sarah,
You
you're not as
misogynistic bastard.
you're
Mel.
not as pretty as me, Sarah. You're not as
The
pretty as
irony
me.
is that he's a man. He's a man, and he's telling a
Wait
woman
a
what to
minute,
do. It's
yeah.
misogyny.
You
all over again.
misogynistic
All right.
I've been
bastard.
trying
you
to-
are, Mel.
Yes, I've been trying to tell you guys this for years.
Hey, Finkel, how you
It's
doing?
misogyny with extra steps.
Yes, it's a trick.
Also, that term
So,
cis was brought up
I'm gonna
just so
address
that you
what
could
Sarah
call
originally
straight
said
people
about
sissies.
people- about
No, because you don't
being
respect
slower.
Sarah.
And I'm
Because
almost
You
sure
don't get the
that
right to
cis was
talk to Sarah.
invented by a lot of
Never actually
weird
let me
people
answer,
back in the
'cause you
day.
clearly are afraid of new things.
No, Mel. Cis
So,
means
No
sissy.
one's
whenever I-
afraid of you, Mel. No
So whenever
one.
I came in,
This
so whenever I
means-
whenever I try to
don't
answer
think
this,
you're
you cut me
don't
off,
think
right?
you're
Maybe you
that-
could show me that you're not actually afraid of my answer.
Cis means
So Sarah
sissy.
alluded to this being a trend, and the
Period.
problem with it being a trend is that it assumes that children are not born with the gender that they're assigned with at birth, or
Nobody's
sorry, are
assigned-
not born with a gendered
no.
brain at birth is what I meant to say.
That's
And
propaganda.
the fact is
He
that they
can't
are.
It's a
even. He can't even
magic
get
trick.
the
All the
answer
decisions until
straight.
birth. Okay, so
What do
you're
you mean
you're
gender
triggered.
assigned at birth?
You notice that I can
Alright,
say it in
guys,
less than
guys.
100 words, but she can't.
We're getting a little muddled here.
And
So, Mel, what was
if you're
your gender
born-
when you were
So,
born? What was your
At the end
gender
of the
at
day,
birth?
people grow up in an environment that's heavily pressuring them to be cisgendered,
That's
and
good.
because of that,
Because that's good.
And because of that, if it really is a fad, it won't last very long. But if
not
it
a
is
fad.
serious, it will last long. It's
It
that
is serious.
simple.
It has to
Yeah,
be stopped.
especially if you don't have the right support group around you supporting the nonsense, right?
No,
I
no.
say
If you
that
only
we-
have people who try to tell you how awful you are, that's called being gaslit.
You're right,
Wait a
and
minute.
we shouldn't have to
Wait,
do
hold
that,
on.
right? People
Guys,
like you
guys.
should be put places so that they're not out in public where people can see them, so that we
No,
don't
you
have.
don't have to tell
I
them they're
know
awful.
the
You can just shut
future
the fuck up
cure
if you
for all
think
of
so.
this. The future cure will be cloning bodies for people who are born in the wrong body and then doing a brain transplant. There you go. Done. Figured
Except
it
you
out.
can't use
We're all
cloning to
finished.
create a female.
I'm all for that. I'll take
Yeah,
it
dude, we're
money
gonna
into
do
that
some shit.
project.
Like,
So
we're-
does the
we're on
word
the
cis mean real, Mel? Does the word cis mean real? Is that what cis means, real?
No, cis means sissy.
thing that
And
you're
when they
missing
use that term sissy, even if they don't know it, oh, you're a cis. Well, now that you're calling me a sissy, that's an insult. Sorry.
My husband
That
is the
word's not
sissy.
going to stick.
That wouldn't work.
He has like fingernails and
1994
makeup.
as a term, just like people want to separate sex and gender. It's
even
not two
spelled
different
like that, you
things. It
fucking
never has
dumbass.
been.
It's not even spelled that way, you fucking dumbass.
CIS. Yes, I know. You had to change the spelling.
It's
so that
it's
you could
very
get away with it.
fascinating
This
to
guy's
me
getting mad.
how
Yeah,
Mel,
Look how
it's like
triggered he is.
How
extra
does
with just
Mel-
an X.
Mel-
Say you as a pejorative.
Mel,
not
why
that
does if
specifically.
gender and sex are two totally different things, why do you try everything you can do to identify and look as a cis female a cis woman. Why do you do that?
That's the only option.
Two totally
I haven't
different
got a
things.
chance to ask one of my own questions yet. If I call something a
Why do you want to sound like a woman? Why do you want to look like a woman?
I kind of want to
they're
know.
not the same.
You know, I wonder if it's actually a way to kind of minimize the value of being a woman, even though
It is.
Hold on,
Or man.
let me fucking
so much
finish.
bloviating on here.
So like in an aspect, right? You're saying, well, I'm a trans woman and you are only a cis woman or whatever. Like you are.
So you're not
you're lowering the value of like actually being just a fucking woman because you're
So if I
you
call
can't
a
you
trans
can't
fat,
all,
is that
you,
offensive?
hold on a second, you can't all the way be a woman, therefore I'm not allowed to have the title of just
How
woman
is
either.
saying cis?
What I'm saying,
How does that
girl,
lower
is
our
that
status?
because I'm just a fucking woman. I don't need any more titles in front of that. There's no verbiage.
No, I agree. I mean,
or that
you
or
know,
this
if you
or
are
this
just
going on.
the normal,
I
then
didn't.
that makes
I
sense,
didn't
but-
change anything about myself. I was born
Birthing
this way.
person.
This is who I
That's what
am.
cis means.
So on and so. I don't need a fucking title to say that I am exactly how I was born.
Nobody's asking you to.
Imagine the irony of people demanding you respect their identity but won't respect yours.
Thank you. That's exactly the point I was trying to get to. With this.
Exactly.
Do this like a lady.
It's like Cartman. Respect my authority.
I don't understand.
Never judge a book by its cover.
One person is like,
Dude looks like a lady.
Oh my god! You guys are nice.
Hold on. Be respectful to Sarah. I know it's funny, but Sarah's trying to say something.
What I'm saying is like
have
I tolerate a lot of left, right, center, up, down, over, around, all over the fucking place, and I do it typically without a whole lot of judgment on the front level, right? And then I make one comment towards something that you're saying that I do take as an insult, and instead of just being respectful to it, Mel, you shit all over me even more. You call me a fucking snowflake for
You're being a snowflake right now.
finally one goddamn thing. I say I have a problem with that, and then you call me a fucking snowflake. You're the fucking snowflake, Mel. You can't even accept who the fuck
So
you
if
are,
I
and
say
everything
trans
about
fat
yourself
versus
so
cis
much
fat, is that
that
offensive?
you have to go through ways to try to fantasize in a whole nother world about who you are.
So when I make
am right
distinctions
here.
between
I am
trans
me.
fats and cis
You
fats,
are the
is that
snowflake
offensive?
in this aspect. Mel,
You know what trans fat
I
is?
don't think.
It's a
I
type of, it's
don't
something in your
think-
food, right? It's not
Oh
really
my god!
offensive.
I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying, Mel.
Do you understand that,
It's
that
ju-
the reason
no,
that these
Mel,
words are used together
Mel,
is cis means not trans.
You're not listening to. I put up with a lot of your shit, Mel. I put up with a lot of your fucking shit, and I make one comment, and you shit all over that. Fuck you, Mel. Let's get to these super
You're
chats.
very angry
Q-Tard.
That's
No, I'm not,
exactly.
Mel.
That's
No, Mel.
exactly how
My
intolerant.
level of tolerance for this bullshit is just you keep throwing more straw on that fucking camel's back, and the poor fucking
You're
camel.
just triggered by your
is,
own
like,
stupidity. You just don't know
dying.
how words work.
Okay.
Not
so
all gays are like this, Sarah. I swear to you.
That's where we go. That's where we go, Mel. You just did this.
It's
to
just a-
Ticky
it-
Tac.
Mel's
I'm
not
honestly just
fucking
being
gay, though,
descriptive
but
with
Mel's
this.
not gay.
One on
I'm being
one.
descriptive with this.
No, I don't even feel like it.
Oh,
All
no,
right.
no, no,
So
no.
Q-Tar comes in with a big 5.
Get him, Sarah. Get him. Bite his fucking nose off, Sarah. Bite his fucking lugs off.
I'll put you on a fucking leash and walk you around, Furby.
Wow.
Using cis is superfluous. The only reason it's used as a cope by the T's, have fun saying the word. Okay. Lex Wheelie comes in with a big 3. I'm not a cis woman. For fuck's sakes, don't label me. Thank you. Rude Mudcrab with the big 5. Biological women do not require a prefix. It's easy. It's easy. We didn't change anything. We didn't
Sarah.
change in this
Your
way
echo
for,
chamber agrees with you. I'm so happy for
Sarah.
for years upon years upon years. Yes.
Sarah, I've learned something over my 50 years of life. So, women do run the world. 90+% of the men out there, they will go along with whatever their wife says. And that's the main reason why gay people got rights. Because women went out there because of their sons and stuff like that and said, hey, it's just my son. He's not doing nothing bad. Just let him have some rights and be able to like live his life. And I always told people, if they start going after women like this, as soon as the women go, nope, that's enough of that, we're all fracked. Women run the world. If you go after women like these people are doing and saying, you're this, you're that, I'm going to go to your bathroom, blah, 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 you'll just be done. That's it. And that's exactly what's happening in society now. They're just putting their foot down. When the women put their foot down, that's the end of the discussion.
I find it funny that we have this notion that like women is this thing that we need to protect, but it's also like super.
I want to hop in.
Oh, my life!
So
Did you just say
universal.
that?
It's so universal and so true, so objectively true that not even a trans person can be it. But yet it's so fragile that if you add a classifier to it that says they're not trans, that's all that this means is not trans. Then
leave the classifier out. Just
it shreds everything that being a woman is, and that's how fragile you are.
But being a what do you know about being
coming from a man? How misogynistic is that? How misogynistic is that?
Ticky Tac, you said you wanted to chime in.
No, I just wanted to ask 10th man. So if it's women giving the orders to men and you have a husband, so who's the one giving the orders?
Right now, him, because we like to switch back and forth because it's hot.
Yeah, switching is hot. I agree there.
Damn.
But to elaborate on your question, sir, just because. So this is the problem. I thought you were going to come a different way, so I'm going to answer the question I thought you were going to answer or to ask me. So I'm a little high. So this is the problem. Is I thought you were going to say, hey, and say something about that women don't run the world. It's true. Your father, your grandfather, they might have been the one that worked and stuff like that. But if their wife said, okay, we need to go help one of our family members, or we have this family occasion, even if they don't want to go, they go.
Yes.
Women
look at men wear the pants. Men wear the pants in the relationship, but the woman takes into the wardrobe and tells them what ones to wear.
That's right, and tells them what to wear. You got it.
Because sometimes somebody gets away doesn't mean they rule the world. It means there's compromise.
Yeah. And
once a woman does something that a man does not totally agree with, that's when the man actually steps in. Right, this is where Mel hasn't got a Scooby. Shut the fuck up, Mel. Shut up, right?
You're always talking, dude.
Okay, Furby.
No, that's not how
I'm always talking. That's fucking hell. I'm always talking.
I'm a step ahead.
You attention-seeking little slut.
You don't like it when people are a step ahead of you, eh? But like in my house,
one step ahead. You're one step beyond.
Rule of law. Shut the fuck up. And he would slap her.
So
what you said,
Mel, until I'm being told to shut up by the host, right? I'm going to shut up, dickhead. Right? Okay. You're a man. I'm a man. I'll fight you
actually
right
can.
now. Okay.
I'm pretty sure anyone telling you to be quiet makes you incapable of it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure anyone telling you to be quiet turns you on.
True. So, anyways, 10th man. Well, that's not how it worked in my household.
What do you mean, 10th man? I'm talking to you. 10th man's a Tony. I am.
My grandpa. So
say sorry. Say sorry, Mel.
Maybe that's the problem.
Yes,
but maybe that's the problem. If that wasn't how your household was.
Yep.
I feel like 10th man likes to get poked. So
sometimes.
There you go, bud. I'm helping him out. Finkel's been here this whole time, and
he's giving him a reach around. He's giving him a reach around.
By the way,
hi, Finkel.
Hello. I'm just curious. Which one of you is the expert?
Duck, go work on the back.
Me. I'm the expert. I'm the expert.
If he's the expert, then I'm the fucking PhD holder.
Someone said 20 years. I would call them a slow.
Yeah, I've only been doing this for over, almost 40 years that I've been, actively gay.
All right, who here can say that they've accidentally said on the nuts?
Trans issues or sex ed.
Well, yeah, it is. Y'all share the same degeneracy.
No.
They're the same degeneracy. So why do we have wildly different medical treatments?
They're nowhere close to the same thing. Being a gay person, and especially, well, you mean because I'm trans? Yeah, no, I know. But I'm not. I'm a different kind of trans.
But here's what you missed, 10th man, is like you used to have fight in you, and I still have fight in me, and we're fighting the same fight.
Nope, you're fighting a losing battle. You're fighting a losing battle, Mel. You're fighting a losing battle.
Nope.
I'm fighting to get left alone.
I know
yeah,
what's
me too,
going on
actually.
here.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Check it out. This is what's happening right now.
Everyone.
There you
go.
Oh, Barry, I just didn't want to claim.
Mel, I'm still wondering what our babies would look like. That's what I'm wondering. What our babies would look like, Mel.
Why on earth?
Or how we would even have them.
Imagine it would be something like a frog.
You're carrying it, obviously.
If they had ears like that, right? Okay, then
Wait, we have super chats. Here we go. Can I read this one?
No. Rude mud crab, rude cunt crab with the big 10. We know they aren't T because they don't use the prefix of T. T want a cis prefix, so that all will fall under the umbrella of women and allow T to also just be a woman.
Spoken like a true sissy. Spoken like a true sissy who won't come up on panel.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I do know Rude Mud Crab is usually working while we are streaming because he is.
Yeah, working is for
across
sissies.
the world.
Working is for cis people.
In the other world.
Wait there, Mel, you're the man that dresses like a woman, pretends to be a woman, right? Okay, and you call other people a sissies.
Absolutely, I second that.
How do you know that someone is a man who dresses like a woman?
Wait a minute. Were you guys saying?
Actually, do you know that the one thing that Mel will never be able to defeat is the fact that his shoulders will always be able to support 3 heads, whereas a woman's shoulders will only be able to support 2.
I will give it to Brick though. He actually does going around lifting up trans women's skirts to make sure they're trans first. Like he actually does check before he makes the assumption.
Hey,
yeah, well, I don't want to be gay. I don't want to be gay, Mel. I don't want to end up being gay. Right? Okay.
If he pulls up the right skirt, right, Brick. When you pull up the right skirt, all you hear is
ding ding. Round one.
I
whack it in.
I love you.
Why? Thank
Mel,
you.
I've got no hard feelings. But again, this is just a debate. Okay. That's all it is. Conversation. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Earl is making her exit. If you could allow her the floor, please.
I posted a really good study in the chat for Mal and Ticky Tac to look at about the actual topic of the debate. So, if you want to look at that, it's in the chat. And I'm starving, so I'm going to go eat.
Bye, Earl.
Oh, she sounds like a lovely woman. Her.
It was nice to meet you, Earl.
I missed that part of the discussion. Do we need sex education? in
Hey,
school?
Sarah. I'm just wondering.
This panel, yes, we do.
Oh, sorry. Finkel hasn't said a word. You go ahead, Finkel.
Finkel, you're slowly becoming one of my favorite people on these panels.
Hold on, we gotta balance.
That's
the
not a good
Furbies
thing,
group.
Finkel. That's not a good thing, Finkel. You don't want to be his favorite person. Okay.
There, now we have
don't really care
Furby in
about
every corner. Go ahead, Finkel. I'm sorry.
No, you started first. Go ahead.
No, I just said we had Furby in every corner. Go ahead.
All right, let me ask Sarah a question.
No, Finkel was gonna go. Let
sorry.
Finkel go.
I apologize. I came in late. I missed the question. Do we need sex education in school? But having listened to a lot of this panel, I'd say clearly we do because there's some ignorance going on in this panel. Just my observation.
Example. Give me an example, Finkel. Example.
Do you know how to stick a penis into a vagina, Finkel?
I'm familiar with the concept. Yes,
I did it once.
Hey, Finkel.
What, are you a virgin?
Please.
Finkel, is Sarah a cis woman or just a woman?
I believe she prefers to be called a woman.
No, but in your opinion.
He's asking if you think that we need the prefix cis.
Who's right and who's wrong? Should she be called a cis woman? Yes or no?
In my opinion, a woman is a woman, a man is a man. What they tell us they want to be is what we should refer to.
You can't use the word woman to describe the term woman.
So it's all in me. I'll be everything right now.
So what if someone
So Finkel, with that Finkel, you're the sex ed teacher.
Hold on. Duck gets timed out pretty fast, so when he gets an opportunity to speak, let him speak.
Yeah. So the most important question I think here is that, like, if someone asks Sarah, like, "Yo, Sarah, are you a woman?" Like, for some reason, like someone's hitting on you at a bar or something. Like, I think it's cool to say you're a woman, but like if people are talking about race and gender, I don't think it's required, but I also don't think it's disrespectful to say, like, yo, yeah, I am, like, actually, despite all the odds and everything, I'm a cis woman, I don't see a problem with that.
My life, I understand why he gets timed out now. Fucking someone time him out.
It sounds like he's just rolled with it in the bar, man. Like he's
You're still in the back. I apologize. It is just natural for me to throw people up and fill the spot. I forgot the timer's running, but I will. I think I know his question. Here's what I say. Like with all of the whole concept around transgenderism, right? We're taught that it's hate speech if you make fun of them or poke at them or call them. Even in the workforce, corporate workforce, you get letters saying like, you know, we respect this and your HR clubs of, you know, diversity and all of these fun things. Okay, so I'm being told that I have to call somebody by something that, you know, I maybe know otherwise or whatever the case may be. So if I'm sitting here saying, all right, well, it goes both ways. You keep saying cis woman and I'm telling you I'm a woman and then you're not you're not respecting that, then why the fuck should I care what you say? So that's where that comes from. It never the street never goes both ways with this topic ever. If I say, well, fine, then I want to play it the same way, then I'm told I'm a snowflake, I'm a this, I'm a that, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, then what the fuck do I care about your feelings?
I'd marry this bitch if I was single, right? Fuck.
No point in me answering, I guess.
Sarah, so
translate what Sarah just said. She's basically saying, live and let live. But if you don't let me live, I'm not going to let you live.
Well, the problem, Sarah, is that you're trying to negotiate with these people on good faith, right? But they're starting from a position of lying to themselves and then trying to seek justification in the world by forcing other people to agree with their worldview and accept and adopt language that's designed to promote ideas that their behavior is normal.
So that's not it at all. So the difference is that a lot of
Shut up, Mel. You're not even in this conversation.
A lot of the hate speech that's directed towards trans people are specifically
hate speech
for being trans. The use of cis women is not meant to out cis women. It's
so cis isn't hate speech. You're not using hate speech when you refer to a woman as cis.
I'm trying to land my plane.
No, you're wrong. No. They call cis even
yeah,
me. They'll say that.
Give a DEI higher. You land in a plane as a DEI higher. It's not going to land right.
It's gonna be upside down. He's gonna be the only person to land a plane backwards.
They will call me cisgender as well. They'll say 10th man cisgender.
You're no evil all you want, but I'm going to definitely land my plane. So when it comes to saying cisgender woman, we primarily do that when we're talking about two types of women in the same body.
When you're engaging in hate speech.
Think a real woman. Do you mean a real woman?
Misogynist hate speech.
So, both types of women.
Yeah, the man being misogynist against the woman.
Misogynist hate speech. That's what I'm saying. I've been telling you.
We typically only use this in bodies of.
Yeah, Mel, my wife would fuck you right up, son. She would absolutely batter the face off you. She would. And she's a real woman, and you're a real man.
No threats of violence.
Even with
Stop
your
it. No, don't say stuff like that. Don't.
Sorry. I mean, I meant in a game of chess.
No way. There's double allowed according to you, but I can explain to you the difference. Is that again? The hate speech that's applied to protect hate speech laws that are applied to protect trans people or protect them from speech that outs them for being trans. With the cisgender thing, it's not meant to out individual cis women. It's meant to distinguish in bodies of literature that talk about both types of women, which ones are trans and which ones are not trans.
Why can't you just call them women? Why can't you just call them women? Why can't you just call them women?
We don't need to be separate. Like women don't need to be like pulled out of the masses with another adjective. You want to make yourself different. Okay, we start with man and woman. You want to make yourself different. Fine, you get a different title to whatever you want to be, whatever. But I don't need that. You just say I'm a woman.
Considering that you want me to accept the biological reality, like I'll never reproduce, I'll never be a quote real woman. But when all I'm saying is
yes.
Yes, the pennies just dropped. The pennies just dropped.
Hold on. Pause. Do you guys think
that the irony is that you keep telling me this, but at the same time, when we say, okay, well, we're going to have two different words for both types of women, because we now have trans women and people who are not trans women, which is the definition of cis.
Okay, guys,
we're just going to call you a man. How about that? We'll just call you a man.
Yeah.
1 second. So this is the thing. So I used to kind of be a professional dominatrix before I got married, right? whatever you.
Hold on. Before you get into this long story, quick sticks. Can you?
My stories are fast.
Hold on. Can you voice confirm for me, please? Quick
Speed
sticks.
bodes well.
Hello.
Hello. What's 3 + 3?
Is it me you're looking for?
Can everybody else shut the fuck up, please? Thank you. Quick sticks. What's 3 + 3?
6.
All right. How'd you find this channel?
I don't know. I just Googled. I just searched YouTube for debate and this showed up.
Oh, you have something to add to the topic?
What is the topic?
All right.
He's British.
Shut up.
He's British and he's pissed.
I'm going to remove you from the panel for this evening. Come back another time when you're paying attention. All right.
There you go.
Well in there,
That's
Sarah.
the way to do
Oh,
that.
what? There you go. That was well done.
We go back to flow states, like 8 or 9 rules of how to be a good panelist. One of them is don't jump onto the panel and say, I have no idea what the topic is. I'm just here to yip yap. Like, it's not how this works, especially when we're coming off of a debate. Like, it's very topic specific. Of course, we can move in a roundabout way, but you like to jump on and say, I don't know what the topic is. And then that tells me
What
you have
y'all
to
doing?
Fucking panel squatters. That's what you are.
Like you come on, you go, how you doing?
How you doing, baby boo?
How you doing?
So as I was saying, I used to kind of be a dom, right? Like professionally. And so I've told people that like I had 2 different dudes that wanted to be dogs, all this stuff. So I don't tell that stuff because I'm like, oh, look how cool I am. I did these cool things. I try to tell these stories to explain that I have seen all sides of these coins. So many coins, billions of coins. And I've already explored all this stuff. And these conversations are pedantic to me.
Mr. Bojangles over here.
10th man, what is your blood alcohol content? Let's be real.
0. I haven't had a drink in weeks.
Wow, you could have fooled me. Are you like
it's his testosterone level.
Bro,
That's higher than you
like,
think.
Mel, do you think you're getting a dig in, like, somehow? I'm confused.
That was one of
British
the most
Thunderbird?
drunk diatribes I've ever heard, but okay.
I agree
Right,
with
well-
this one, Neve. 10th man, I do feel like you kind of overload on the fetishes a little as examples, almost like you want to talk about them.
No,
Yeah,
no, I
so
try to give it as
10th man, with that
examples
10th
of
man.
madness.
10th man.
We can come up
This was
with
ma-
like 100 other directions of saying what your point was or getting to the moral of the story without incorporating fetishes. Just for the
Plus, I
record.
thought this was meant to be fucking like it was meant to be like between me and you. What happened, 10th man? You weren't meant to divulge that information.
Okay, Mel, like, serious question. Okay, I don't even know. Are you a teacher?
No, I'm not.
He's
okay. Then it wouldn't. My question would have been in relevance to you being a teacher, so never mind.
You can still just ask, and if I have answers from any of the research I've done for this topic, I'll try to answer it in the best of my knowledge.
I hear someone's nose whistling.
If you prepare to,
It's mine. My nose has been broken many times. It's a deviated septum. Anyway, so
10th man, Neve wants to know if you know what an anecdote is.
No, explain it to me.
Neve, get up here.
Utilize your personal experience as a way to either you can make an argument or tell a story or.
So is it just personal experience when it's been hundreds of experiences?
It's your personal experience.
Had all the experience. Nobody has had better experiences than I have. Everyone talks about Melanie has the greatest experiences ever.
Why are you doing a high-pitched voice, man?
Great experiences. We need a Donald Trump impersonator for that one.
I'm not very good at
They're the greatest
Beach
experiences.
Twix coming in with the big 5 says an LGBT man randomly talking about fetishes with no context, no way. 10th man to the abyss. You got 5 minutes backstage. 10.
Oh, I had something to say to 10th man. I was going to say.
Choke me, devil daddy. Choke me.
I shit you not. I'm still in disbelief whenever these kicks aren't happening to me. I'm still like, I'm so
You
used
can't
to
get
it.
kicked. You can't
I know,
get
but like every time I'm just like, whoa, they're not kicking me. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can't get kicked.
Yeah, because they can't kick you, Mel. Right? They can't kick. Because believe me, if we could, I would have done it ages ago.
Yeah, I know.
Why are you
Thank
threatened?
Ricky. I'm glad you're
just-
supporting the channel, buddy.
No, I wouldn't. Of course I wouldn't. I fucking
Gender
love Melanie.
identity disorder.
Bricky, do you ever donate money to the channel?
I never
Jid.
donate to anybody, Sarah. Love. What I do is I provide contents, right?
Okay.
By jumping up
fair.
on the panel.
That's a
Now, look,
fair
love.
trade. That's fair.
I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with you, love. I do really love your channel and shit like that, right? But I'm very poor, right? I have got no money at all.
He's got no
So
pence.
if anyone wants to donate a bricky, okay, and get me out of the little shithole that I'm in, you can all do that because all yous are millionaires, right? And not one of yous have gave me 1 pence. So
also, I have a live stream. Nah, I'm just kidding. Just
He's got no
my own
pence.
shit.
I love that. He's got no pens. Where are your pens at, man?
My pence around my ankle.
How many quid, my friend? How many quid?
Quick quid.
Quick quid.
Normally, I would
So
sympathize.
to respond to someone in chat, no, I do not work with kids at all. I work on a mushroom farm.
What's that, Finkel?
Yeah, you fed shit and kept in the dark, Mel. You fed shit and
You
kept in the
didn't tell
dark like
me.
a mushroom.
You didn't tell me you deal with spores molds. We need to talk about hallucinogens. What's going on? Why are we on this topic?
Yeah, Mel's a fun
hold
guy.
on.
He's a fun
I love
guy.
that
You know.
we have the clown and Darth Vader. This is like a standoff.
I live in
Uh,
space.
It's Darth
Trippy
Vader,
Cat.
Sarah. Darth Vader.
Oh,
We-
Trippy would win that
Darth
battle.
Vader?
Father, is that
Fuck Brick off. This is his only contribution. You got 10 minutes in the back, I think.
There you
I
go.
think. I'm pretty sure.
Is
Pretty
my
sure
audio
that's what
coming
that
through
means.
all right? Because I just got a new mic and shit, and I just wanted to make sure it sounded okay.
No, clear as a bell. It's beautiful, actually. Nice
Thank
to
you.
hear a nice mic.
I'm
for
sad
one.
I think I
to
can hear
see,
your stomach contents.
What's
That's
that,
pretty good.
Finkel?
I'm sad to see Bricky go because I wanted to say to them right to their face. Usually, I'd be sympathetic towards someone who doesn't have enough money to donate to a channel. I wouldn't judge it, but because they've been so judgmental, I'd say tough shit.
Fair enough. What's up, Angry Snowman? What you got for us?
Oh, not much. I mean, I've been sitting and listening to this for quite a while. I went back and listened to some of the debate, and I've been paying attention to the conversation going on. And something really kind of dawned on me, and it's don't you find it interesting that the folks that are pushing this whole wanting to give sex education to kids in grade school and elementary school and shit like this, they also the ones that are pushing it and screaming the loudest are the ones that can't have kids.
Yeah, I think that's
Isn't that
point,
interesting?
actually.
They're the ones
Yeah.
that have to go out and actually recruit rather than create.
That would make sense. Yeah, I could jive with that.
Don't really
I
rely
think
on that though.
I think also not having children makes it a harder stance to make that argument. And no offense to Ticky Tac and Mel on that. But I think the conversation weighs a little heavier when it comes from parents, because parents are the ones that have to do with this. They have to see it. They have to live it. And like understanding how a parent and child relationship operates, like you never know what it is until you are one or in
Right.
that role.
Exactly. Well, and another thing that I've noticed too is if you look at like the dynamic of who generally becomes a school teacher now, you see an increasingly large shift towards people from the LGBTQ community teaching our kids.
What is that?
It's almost like an agenda or something.
Visibility of these people. Another part of it, though, is that since they exist as part of a population, they'll also exist as part of a subpopulation. So in this case, it was part of a workforce.
Yeah, but there's such a small subpopulation that I find it rather coincidental that there's so many that are using the education field as their field of
Where are you
work.
getting this from that it's so many?
Dude, I'm just going by what I see.
Where are you seeing that?
I'm going by what I see in my own kids' schools and the schools around me. And in the schools that my
I think you should
schools
at the
around
very
you-
least data check that only, and I only say that because that could be just regional. You know,
you think
like,
it's regional that in the Midwest you're going to have a whole bunch of trans and LGBT
Or
teachers?
confirmation bias from like
I'm just saying.
media,
Well,
that puts a spotlight on those kind of teachers.
Look, I think we can all agree that the internet lends visibility to everybody, right? Like you got the internet, you're seeing more crazies, you're seeing more people that don't believe the same things you do. I think the internet just puts it right in your face.
Well,
and they also
I
like
would-
to tend to put the worst of the worst in your face too.
I would suggest you're seeing more in the last 8-10 years is becoming it's becoming more socially acceptable. People of all LGBTQ straight.
Why is it becoming more socially acceptable though, Finkel?
Well, because people are learning to live and let live, and that's
No,
bringing
because
out-
people are being forced to accept something they don't accept.
No,
That's
you
exactly
guys-
correct. It's being legislated, man. And anytime, like, see, that's the thing is like you'll sit there and smile when it's not your rights that are being pushed on, but when somebody else has a grievance, then it becomes
No, I don't think
acceptable.
the rights are being infringed on because someone can openly be gay or trans or.
Nobody had a problem
No,
with
no.
people being gay or trans. What we have a problem with is people pushing their ideology and their rhetoric on our children, specifically children that are too young to even understand what's being said to them.
The ideology is as old as the hills. It's called live and let live.
So Snowman, this is the thing. Where I grew up, in the way where the gay community that I was in, it just was not okay to, talk to kids or so. I'll tell you guys. So, and I've had this argument many times because they're like, that's not possible. But in Canada, up until I think 2009 or maybe 2000, I don't know, somewhere around there, maybe 15, I don't know. I don't remember when it was. The legal age went from 14 to 16, right? So, but I've never done anything like that because I just had a rule in my head. So since I turned 19, I've never gone below 18, right? That's just a rule that I have in my head. And there have been times where people have messaged me on gay apps because I used gay apps for a long time. And they'd be like, hey, 16's legal or whatever. And I'm like, block. Immediately block. And that's the way it was. And it's really weird to see all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we're going to talk about butt plugs in school and show cartoons about blowjobs. I'm like, what?
Teachers doing
What's happening?
TikToks talking about having these discussions with kids and doing it so openly as if they're doing nothing wrong is insane.
No, it's literally a crime.
I mean, in what world do we make it okay and normal for an adult to talk about their sexual or their sexual kinks and pleasures with kids?
So you understand the difference between you not liking something and something having some sort of real morality that society.
How does talking about your kinks and your sexuality with a kid relevant to that kid's
This is
upgrowth?
just your politics of personal grievances, like in motion.
You aren't even answering
automatically
the question. You're being dishonest with the even
Snowman, is it not true that automatically when you present any type of pornography or anything like that, as far as I know, even if you were to talk to anybody under the age of 18 about it on the street, it would be considered grooming or something to that effect, right? Like predator catchers. So I don't understand how it's any different. I don't understand how it's any different from the old guy that tries to meet the 14-year-old at Arby's,
isn't pornographic,
or the 14-year-old that talks to the trans person at Arby's about dysmorphia.
Because
I don't see the difference.
People is not pornographic.
We weren't
So
talking
there's yes, it is. It's a fetish to cut your body parts off. Yes, it
I don't
is.
think you really know what a fetish, especially since you talk about it a lot on here with everybody.
Oh, I sure do.
You brought up sexual, what is it? Heterosexuality being a sexual normative? Well, absolutely, it's going to be. That's 98% of the freaking population of the world.
One second, is getting
why should we be teaching children something that only 1% of the population takes part in?
Why are you so offended?
One second.
1% of the
One second. What does sex mean, Mel?
Sex can refer to either the act of reproducing, or it can be someone's reproductive capacity.
Right. So it has something to do with your genitals, right?
Usually.
Right. So if you go to get a Prince Albert, which is a piercing through the glands of your penis, then that's a fetish, right? That's a fetish, right?
10th man,
No,
dude.
that's
Come
not
on,
a fetish.
Yes. Yes,
yeah,
it
it
is.
is. I've had
That
I've
is
had one of
actually a
those.
fetish because people hang weights from that shit. It's a fetish.
It's the same thing.
It's a
It's
fetish. Not everyone
exactly
who
the
gets that
same
gains weight
thing.
from it.
You just don't don't want to see the truth for what it is. It's exactly the same thing.
No, there is no
Hey,
Prince
hey,
Albert
hey.
fetish.
If it goes around to the back, is it a Prince Albert in a can?
Oh, that's messed up. That's messed
Or is
up.
it in your can? You know?
In a
Can it
can.
get hot? Can it get hot?
Hold on. Ticky Tac is making his exit. Closing thoughts from you, darling.
Yeah, I guess I don't have too many closing thoughts on other than this panel went very degenerate very quickly. But
I showed up.
hey, I didn't have to entertain anybody for the past like couple of hours, so I guess that's a big plus. Thanks for hosting, Sarah. Thanks for having this debate, Melanie, and I hope all y'all have fun.
See you, Tiki.
Thanks, Ticky
Bye,
Tac.
Tiki.
I'd like to clear up 3 things. One, they're not teaching K through 12 kids about butt plugs. 2, there's
I
no
hope not.
curators in the bathrooms in K through 12. And 3, a man in a dress telling a story at the library is not going to convert your kid.
Yeah, but they shouldn't.
It'd be a
teaching in
different
the
story if
library.
it was just a man in a dress, Finkel. You know it's
Can
not
I ask
a
you-
man in a dress.
Would you?
Finkel.
Well, let me ask you this: would you let your kid watch a movie with that very thing in it, or grandkid?
As a parent, I would choose not to, while they're a child. Once they're 18 or 21, whatever.
Well, I bet half the I bet half the freaking room loves the Jesus death porn that you guys watch with the Passion of the Christ.
What
I
does
don't know
that
what
have
the
to do with
difference
anything?
is. No offense. Sorry.
Can I ask Finkel a question, please? May I?
Yeah. People let me answer.
Okay, so do you consider marijuana a gateway drug?
No, I consider it a drug.
You consider it a drug, but you don't see it as more acceptable for the younger children to be influenced into harder drugs later in life?
Well, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana. I wouldn't want a kid under 18 consuming anything.
Well, it's 21.
So you say that external influences can influence a child to make bad decisions.
What's a bad decision? A narcotic is a bad decision.
Right.
How about puberty blockers?
Mutilating your body?
But the parallels right here that I'm drawing are that if you can be influenced through external forces, then why is it any different for a teacher who supports a specific way of life?
Are any of you even capable of explaining in good faith why trans people get surgeries, why people would want these surgeries, why they want HRT?
They're mentally ill.
No, because you can't explain to me why, if sex and gender are different, why you feel it necessary for your sex to match your gender.
So just to be clear, you don't even know your enemy, right? You just to be clear, you don't even know your enemy.
The good
The whole
question,
reason you
Snowman.
think it's wrong. The
before
whole
anybody
reason you
else
think it's
goes,
wrong is because you
Trippy-
don't understand it.
Trippy Cast is also gonna make his exit if you give him the floor.
I am. This is an interesting stream. I still feel like cis is a way to insult people without insulting people.
It is.
Hey, well, you're a sissy.
To me, it means sissy. It does mean sissy.
Yeah, you're a
But Mel, I mean, like if I was gonna sit there and call you the T word all day, you'd probably start to feel like it was, an insult, right? Over time, like if I was doing it in a derogatory way.
Tranny, you can call me.
And
tranny,
I feel like the term cis itself is just kind of, it's overboard. It's like we don't need a separate term for it.
except for when you're talking about both things in the same body literature. But anyways, I'll let you.
But you do understand, Trippy, that
Hold on.
it's not just.
It is Trippy's exit. Let him.
Yeah, I'm trying
close,
to.
please.
Sorry, I'm making it too long.
No, you take your time, Trippy. Everybody else, just shut the fuck up.
Well, like I said, I don't have any problem with anybody who's transgender. Like, yeah, I mean, you're doing what you wanted or what you got to do to feel as comfortable as you can, right? That's
Does
what we all.
anyone on the panel deny the thing in nature known as...
It is his closing
I don't call.
statement.
I ain't even gonna count Finkel as interrupting me. That guy and me could probably host a stream together. And we make rainbows. But yeah, I like the conversation. I think it's neat. It's necessary, especially in certain circles, to show that like not everybody who's labeled as certain things are crazy, like the folk that you see on the internet. Like that Riley Dennis that I had brought up earlier, or Milo Stewart from years ago. Like those people were put out there as like, this is the trans person, and then they were labeled transgenders, which that's a whole different fucking ballgame. But yeah, I'm gonna scoot. Thanks for having me.
But before
Chad.
you do, you do know that they call me cis, right? They call me cisgender too. You know that, right? Because I present as man.
Sissy. Even though you're definitely not.
It's kind of hot though.
Yeah, you think so? I mean, let's put you in a tutu and see where it goes.
I listen. See, you
Don't
say
give
stuff
him
like that,
any more
and,
fetishes.
right.
Don't give him
and then I
any
go,
more.
and I say things that are.
Fetish, I'm telling you.
I make people's heads explode, bro.
Yeah, you do. I've watched. I've seen. That's why I was like, yeah, I've seen you do magic.
They
But all right,
explode
y'all.
from the tip.
I know.
Everybody have a great stream. I hope you guys all get along. Can't we all just get along? And then punch each other rapidly.
I can't get along with Finkel. He's trying to show me up all the time.
All right, later, y'all. Bye. Bye. Oh yeah, subscribe to the Trippycast channel. Naomi, put the link in the chat. Bye. And
I'm
make
curious
money.
if anyone on the panel is in denial of a fact of nature. It's not frequent, but it happens. The hermaphrodite, where someone is born with both male and female organs.
Yeah, they're biologically defective people in all sorts of different ways.
Oh, defective.
Or just the same as it would be just the same as somebody born with like 11 fingers or
I have
webbed feet. Or
It'd be very high value on Pornhub.
There's Finkel, there's like, I don't know what the number is. It's more than 10 different conditions that can lead someone to be classified as LGBTQ plus. We should believe from a naturalist perspective, most of those are based in genes. So period, end of story.
No,
that's all I need to
Blue jeans are acid
That's the
wash.
end of story. Not period. None of that. I mean,
Obviously,
that's
it's not
all.
the end of the story because here we are in 2021 demonizing each other for our beliefs in it.
And by the way, Duck, that's not how biology works. Genes are not the end all be all. You can't look at someone's genes and know exactly how
You got
they'll
a
look
degree in
or how-
biology, Mel?
especially how they'll think or behave, right? So
Well, you can
can't
look at them
use
and see
these
if they're a man
genes-
or a woman, right? You can look at their genes and see if they got
Yeah,
X, Y
no,
chromosome or
that's
X,
100% right.
So I'm going to finish what I was saying because that's just particularly relevant to what you just
100%
asked.
right. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how you have the authority to tell anybody they don't understand biology.
So what we can't say from genes alone is that someone's brain will be sexually dimorphic in the same way that their genitals are. In 99% of
Now you're a
cases, it
neurologist
is.
too?
But
I heard a neurologist
9% of
explain that.
cases, sometimes someone has a brain that's sexually dimorphized. That's not the right word, but in a direction that's the opposite of the genitals they were born with.
You know, Furby, I'm going to agree with you on this. This is the one time that I'm going to agree with you. You can look at brain scans and determine whether or not people have psychological disorders. You are absolutely correct.
So what we actually see though is that like there, you know how like there's a difference in certain brain regions just in size, not necessarily in function, but just in size between men and women. Well, trans
But you're
women
admitting
also
it's
have those
psychology.
size
Melanie,
differences.
you're admitting it's psychology. Sorry, not to talk over you. You're admitting it's just psychology.
But then
Let
you're
me
also seeing
interrupt. Dustin is now going to make his exit with his closing statements. Go ahead, Dustin. Dustin.
In all honesty, you guys are going to have to at some point clarify for me if someone is born that way or if they decide to be that way. Because if you're telling me that visibility is a factor and that's why we see these numbers jumping as opposed to it being a natural effect of them just being born that way, then I see the contradiction in how you're collecting this data and you're trying to frame it a certain way rather than allow it to be what it really is. Influence is a factor, and anybody who's denying that is trying to play a game. And the very bottom line is that when you make stories and you call people names and you call it hate speech in one direction but not in the other, you're just being hypocritical. Thank you for your time. It was very nice being on the panel. I hope to do it again in the future. Have a good night.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Dustin. Have a
So
good
going back to the brain scans thing, if I can just very quickly respond to that, what you've just said is essentially that mental illness takes the form of when a brain is sexually dimorphized to be female. Because again, what I said is that trans women's brains have this region size differences that are similar to a cisgender woman's brains. I'm just saying that just to make the distinction there, not to insult anybody.
Then just say woman.
And the reason that matters is because unless you can define an mental illness as having those brain region size differences, then it seems perfectly normal to have a brain that's feminized.
Look, and I agree. If there are women who have men's brains or women who have men's brains because of some sort of deformity or defect, then I'm going to agree with you. It doesn't have to
be a deformity or defect.
Well, for whatever the reason, right? Whatever the reason, there's something wrong with them. I agree with you.
Why does it have to be wrong? Why can't it just be a natural deviation?
Yeah. So defects are natural, right? As part of the human condition. People are going for birth defects all the time.
It's not connotation that matters.
Well, calling it a defect.
We're rhetoricians, right?
But I'm going to agree with you that those people should probably go through that transition you're talking about, so that their genetic defects don't get spread to the next generation. So we're on the same page there, bud.
Well, it's not going to happen anyways. Because the origin of being trans doesn't originate in genetics to begin with. It actually originates in the womb of the mother and testosterone levels.
So there's a way to fix it.
Uncle Guns came in with a question. He's saying, if genitals don't define sex or gender, then why are you entertaining removing them?
That's what I asked earlier.
So no one's entertaining
sex and gender are
removing
different.
gender.
Why do you feel the need to make your gender match your sex?
No one's removing anything. Is he talking about my genitals? Because again, this is the sort of thing where
Or adjusting hormonally or this or that, I guess. I think he's
it does
kind of
it does
going
define
all-
my sex, and it is one of the things that contributes to someone's self-perception.
But your guys' argument is sex and gender are different. They aren't the same thing.
So I'm going to try again. So they genitals do relate to sex. They also have a heavy impact on my self-perception. I'm 100% certain that by having a neo-vagina, I could alleviate a lot of my gender dysphoria. It's that simple.
You mean a surgical wound? Is that the thing you just called a neo-vagina?
I don't think you know what a wound is.
It's an open cut, right?
Yeah, but you understand that like every surgery leads to a wound, but then it heals.
Yeah, but yours doesn't heal, right? Because
What are you going to do about the
form
depression of
epithelial
never being
tissue.
able to orgasm again?
You form epithelial tissue that is similar to the cells inside of your mouth.
Yeah.
Epithelial tissue is what you heal with. That's
So I want to bring it back to
heal
the
wound.
important conversation we were having about Prince Albert's, because I want to do a PSA. Any guys that are in this chat, don't get a Prince Albert. It doesn't heal right. It causes all kinds of problems. I know from experience. No men in the chat get a Prince Albert.
We let him get away with this.
Are you cut or uncut?
Oh, I'm cut.
Yeah, and it still didn't do good. That's not good.
Prince Albert backstage.
I will assure you I had no intention of getting a Prince Albert, but if I ever considered it, I wouldn't base my judgment on what some voice on the internet said.
Well, Mel's not getting a Prince Albert. Mel's getting the whole thing whacked off and getting the Neo vajayjay eventually.
Actually, you know, it's
Mel,
not
when
getting whacked
do
off.
you think that will happen?
The
When are
tissue
you
from
going
my
to fully
penis.
commit to being a woman?
The tissue from my penis, by the way, is used to construct the neovagina, so it's not getting whacked off. For one thing, it's reconstructive
But
surgery.
the balls. What about the balls? The testicles will be
No, those
removed.
go.
You'll be
Those go.
castrated.
They get chucked at a wall. They literally chuck them at a wall. By the way, they chuck them at a
Are
wall
you guys
and then into a
like
trash bin.
not gonna lie, you
When
guys
can we
just jump from
expect it?
science to ball chopping.
Can
I
you
think
give
it's
me an
hilarious.
example of one person who's actually successfully fully transitioned from one gender to another?
Oh yeah, Blair White.
Wrong.
So he changed his chromosomes?
Blair has a penis still.
Blair White
doesn't
can have
have a
kids.
Neo
Blair White
vajayjay.
can birth kids.
Let me get in there with my gender.
Blair has a penis still. How can you say she fully transitioned when she has a penis still? She didn't.
So no, unless you look in her pants, when you decide what pronouns to use for her, you're almost certainly going to use she. If you
It doesn't matter the pronouns. If I decide I want to fuck her and she gets naked, even though she's cute looking and she's
you're
got a
talking about
penis,
sex.
it's a deal
Exactly.
breaker.
Now you're
It's
talking
a
about sex,
deal
not
breaker
gender.
for me.
Exactly. Now you're talking about
It
sex.
doesn't matter what she
Now
identifies. She looks like
gender are different.
If she
No,
has a
you
penis,
said gender are
it's a
different,
deal
Mel.
breaker.
buddy. I'm proud of you. Now you're talking about sex, not
Penises
gender.
are deal breakers.
Up to everyone.
I'm not gay.
Shut the fuck up, Spicoli. We are shifting over to the gauntlet. I have dropped the link
All right.
in the chat. So I want everybody that's watching on the Raging Tomatoes side to start moving over to the gauntlet now. I'm going to, in just a couple minutes, end the Raging Tomatoes stream, and we'll just be
Okay.
on the gauntlet. Spicoli, you just
That's
sit
when I
right
can stop
there.
censoring myself, right?
Do we have to move? Can we stay on here or what?
No, you
Sarah,
stay.
I'm gonna,
Shut up.
I'm gonna make my
Everybody shut
exit.
up. God
Sarah.
damn it. Anybody
Damn
on panel does not have to move anywhere. You stay right here.
Okay.
People
I have
in
something to
chat,
say.
if they want to continue watching, they just have to go over to the gauntlet
Okay.
side. That's all. Okay.
They should.
Duck.
I'm gonna,
I'm
Sarah.
gonna
I gotta
write
take off.
Gauntlet
I
down
just wanted
on.
to say,
Spicoli, your name is not Duck. Shut up.
so since we were talking about genitalia, I'm gonna reveal something about myself. I've never talked about my gender on the internet. That's all I wanted to say. And I hope everyone has a great night. Thanks for having me.
I was getting excited.
I know. I was like, story time.
I've never told anybody this, but I have a vagina. I am a trans man, and I have a I have a biological vagina. I was born biological male, biological female, and I trans. I'm like Uncle Buck
I don't know
Angel.
how you put up with
Nice.
this, Sarah.
Rude mud crab coming in with the big 5. Gender is an expression of sex. People can't change who they are, but they can change how they're perceived. Fair enough.
So they can play dress up. They can
So, Sarah,
cosplay.
Dress up.
Sarah, I wanted to say that. So
Go ahead, Snowman.
No, like I said, it sounds to me like it's just a bunch of cosplay and
Yeah,
people suffering
it
from
is.
mental delusion, expecting the average normal people out here to kowtow and bend knee to their delusion. And sorry, that a lot of us ain't doing that no more. We ain't doing this shit. This shit of bending knee and making exceptions for
You're saying the same thing, dude. I want
And
to say
half of them
for me,
are on
the most delusional part of my
autogynephiliacs who get
life-
hard on dressing as women.
Well, so the most delusional part of my life was when I was pretending to be a man, so that way all of the snowflakes around me who couldn't handle the idea that I was a
You were
woman
never
would
pretending. You were born a man. How could you pretend to be something you already are? You didn't have to pretend to be a man. You're
No,
pretending
I'm sorry
now.
to tell you, but you are not a woman. You never will be a woman.
And I will never be a man.
So
Yes,
Kirby,
you
I
are
wanted
a
to be an
man. You were
expert.
born a male with a penis. You're a male.
Yeah, they get it. They get snowman. There's
You're
been
a
a
male
lot of
who
play.
identifies as a woman. There's a big difference. Wait, there's a big difference
You identify
between
as
a
an
male
expert,
that identifies as a woman and
Pickle, you identify as an
a
expert?
woman. You're a male.